I am calling this working session for the record, it's working session to order. For the record, my name is Tanya Fernandez Anderson, the District 7 City Councilor. I am the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today's working session is on docket 0762, message disapproving the annual appropriation and tax order for FY23, docket 0480, passed by the City Council on June 8, 2022, and docket 0763, message and order for amended annual appropriation and tax order for FY 2023. The Council's budget review process to date has encompassed a series of over 30 public hearings and public sessions, beginning in April and running through June, culminating in an amended budget passed by the Council on June 8th. Pursuant to the 2021 Charter Amendment, the Mayor then returned the Council's amended budget on June 15th and made modifications. The Council can now choose whether to override or accept these modifications, and we'll go into detail explaining how or what we are allowed to do. This working session is being recorded. It is being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Fios Channel 964. I am joined today by my council colleagues, Councilor Kenzie Bach, Councilor President Ed Flynn, Councilor Ruthie Lujan, Councilor Julia Mejia, Councilor Michael Flaherty, Councilor Liz Braden. Today's working session will be a discussion of the mayor's return and modification following information gathered at our hearing yesterday. I think for the format, I would like for us to review the charter, any questions or concerns and answers, discussion about the charter amendment, and then review the mayor's submission, then followed by interdepartmental amendments, then intra-departmental amendments, and then thereafter anything that we hopefully still have time to get to. In the order of arrival, I'll now go to each of my council colleagues to share their thoughts or any suggestions before we actually begin on the agenda. Councilor Bach, you have the floor if you have any statements or comments.
I think I'm all good. The agenda sounds good.
Thank you. Councilor President Flynn?
No opening statement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is that the consensus for everyone? Councilor Lujan? All right, we'll get straight to it. Thank you. All right. Okay, as far as the charter, I mean, I reviewed it yesterday, but if I'm open for suggestions, just in terms of decorum here, not the Robert's Rule of Decorum, but in terms of our conduct here, I am open for suggestions. You can light up your mic if you have any comments that you like to make, any questions. We don't have to go in any specific order as long as I see your mic. If I don't see it and I'm doing this, please call on my name. But we can go over the amended, if there's any questions for the charter amendment, now is the time for us to go over that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Council President Flynn?
Yeah, one question I had, would you be able just to outline what the next steps would be for the council, what our options are in terms of voting, and what would we be voting on, and how that process would work out, just so we were all pretty much on the same page as it relates to what to expect at the next vote and what that vote would actually be.
Okay. Great idea. Thank you. Okay, so basically the mayor, we went through the budget hearings, then we held working sessions, we discussed our amendments, we filed them, we passed them unanimously, and then all three. And then so the capital, the school budget, and the operating budget. Then the mayor had 7 days to get back to us. She could reject or veto and return with a submission of her recommendations. She did just that in less than 7 days on Monday, and then read into record on Wednesday. And we are now here, we held the hearing yesterday to discuss or to ask questions from A&F, and legal was so gracious to accompany us yesterday. And now in this working session today, I would like to review all of what's submitted, and our options are that we can, and to quote the amendments, because I think it's important that we go right to the specific language of the amendment. So we can either override in part or in whole or an overall budgetary veto. So basically, we have the option now to look at each line item in the past, not past, like past tense, but in what was passed or in what was suggested to be passed and what was suggested to all the change that the mayor made. We can pass those, or we can reject. We can also look at whatever she rejected or the administration as a whole rejected, and we can override it. In order to override, we need 9 votes, so 2/3 of the council. And if we don't reach 9 votes, basically we're not overriding. Her suggestion will go automatically into effect. So she doesn't need, the administration doesn't need 7 or 9 in the numbers that we have. They just need, somebody do math, 5. They just need 5 in order to, for it not to be an override. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam.
no problem. Yes, Council Bach? No, it's Council Flaherty?
Thank you.
Can't find my glasses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. I'd like to take a vote to go back to the old budget process because it was much easier, much smoother, and there was more participation. But that ship, I guess, has sailed. But I would be happy to get something back on the ballot that straightens this thing out. Madam Chair.
Would you like to straighten it out, or would you like to go back to the
Yeah,
old?
well, we're in the middle of it now, so we got to sort of just trudge through. The question I guess I have is, as the chair, did you get any feedback from the administration as to why the amendments were rejected? And the reason I'm asking is hypothetically, if they were rejected because the administration doesn't want to lose 13 million out of the police department budget, but they like some of our amendments, but they don't want to take it from there. Did they give you any suggestions as to, hey, these are really good amendments, but we don't want to take from this department or from this program? Could you rework them? So if there's been any, I'm just curious if there was any dialogue with respect to, hey, these are really good amendments. However, where we're taking the money from is not sustainable moving forward. Particularly, I use that because the biggest cuts were to the police department at the tune of $13+ million. That obviously may hamper her and their ability to perform vital public safety functions for the city. Hypothetically, if that 13 million came from other areas, would these amendments have been approved, I guess, and would be in a better place, sort of in partnership, as opposed to now trying to figure out. We no longer have a 112 option, is the way I'm reading this, based on what passed at the ballot. So we're left with, I guess, the first time. Normally budgets would, for capital you needed 2/3, and for operating you needed 7. We're now at a situation where the administration only needs 5 votes. They don't even need a majority of the members of the Boston City Council to pass their budget. So I just So there's a lot there, but I guess the question is, as the chair, has there been any dialogue with respect to the amendments, whether they liked them or they didn't like them? And if they liked them, but they didn't like where we were taking from, do we have the ability to rework where we're taking them from, and see if we can get to a happy place?
That canoe has sailed as
Gotcha.
well.
Okay.
So, no, to answer your question, no, we can't go and further amend the amendment, or amend the override, or amend, what we can do is override, accept, or reject, in part, in whole, or overall. And so there's a point of repeating that in that way, because I want to have this discussion from what I understand, how I understand it, and hopefully you'll be helpful in helping me dissect it a little bit more. So I think that from the conversation yesterday in the hearing, and as well with legal and A&F, I'm not sure that they're sure of whether or not in part means just one line item or a part of a part. And I have reasons to believe that part couldn't be part of a part. So for example, that the car 5, say 200,000 was accepted, but not the full 1 million, then could we take 800,000, so part of that part, and take it from whatever we suggested and override? I think we can, and I'm open for any comments or feedback.
Thank you.
Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, so it's part of the whole conversation you started. So just to touch on that again, do we have a clear understanding, or do you know if we take it in parts and not just take one overall vote for the whole? Would it be individual votes, or would it still just be one vote? If we were going to look at different things, you gave the suggestion of car 5 and the fire, there's probably others that people would suggest they really wanted and would, rally for. Would it be several votes that each one would need 9? And then do we take a vote once we decide which ones we're going to put forward as a part? Can get legally tricky here. Like, is it still just one vote? And if the mayor already has 5 votes, is this all for naught? I don't know. Not that I think any of this is for naught, but the conversation's important, but.
I think we are in a situation where we have to answer your question directly, it does not have to be one vote as we did originally, right? It can be, I can file them separately so that it's multiple, we're taking multiple votes.
Only on the ones that she has accepted, because there were 8, there were some that were completely rejected. Can we go back to the original, or we're working on her adjustments to our amendments?
So I suggest that we address the interdepartmental stuff first, so that it addresses most of what she accepted, because I think she accepted most of those, even though some of them are in part.
Less, or 4 of them were passed with more money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then, the concept that the amendment states that we have shared power, and then it also says that we can modify in whole or in part an appropriation order. But then when I hate to say she, because I'm quite sure it's a team here. So when the administration took it apart, and they took part of a part. For example, if they only said, you want $1 million on this, I'm only going to suggest 800,000. They did that. They took a part of a part. And so now I'm forced to go dissect it and go one by one, because I could recommend to pass what's already suggested, because who's going to say no to money? Who's going to say no to that, right? And so we're going to look at it. If it makes sense, yes, we want to pass these things. But the first docket lists all of the items that were vetoed or rejected. And in those, we need 9 votes to override. And so because we have shared power. I'm saying that she took part of part, we can take part of part. The question now to the council is if you guys have a different feedback and for us to discuss that and what makes sense moving forward.
So one last follow-up on that. Would we again vote on where the money comes from? Or is that now for her to decide if we pass it?
Well, now we've passed that phase where we can actually look at where money
suggest.
comes from. And so in terms of intra-departmental stuff is what you're talking about. If we recommended where the money is coming from, or if we know that we had already allocated or appropriated funds from new funds, the attorney yesterday agreed with us that that was different from intradepartmental stuff that was already appropriated. Councilor Mejia? Then
Chair, so I just have a quick question, just so that I can follow along. And, you know, I believe the goal has always been for us to have some sort of input and some shared collaboration in terms of how we believe the budget would best reflect, right, our community. So if you could help me understand at the end of this process, what it would look like for us to veto the budget and reject it as presented to us. What would be the impact of that?
What this process would look like, or what it would look like in terms of a picture at the end result. For example, say that I went to a store and I wanted an apple, 2 oranges, and a pear. I would, and then mom says you can have half of the apple, 1 orange, and a pear. You can't have the whole apple though. So then I would go back. And then the power says you can reject, override, or accept in whole, in part, or overall. I can accept just a half an apple and the 1 orange and a pear, or I can go back and say, wait a minute, I now have the power. I have to go get all my siblings, 9 siblings, to vote with me so that I can get the other half of the apple or just a quarter of that, which is in part. It doesn't necessarily specify whether in part. It's not saying specifically in part only means the whole apple or the whole orange. In part could be, by definition, in part of that item, or in part meaning that whole item, or in part could mean a half apple and an orange,
Yeah.
or just an orange and a pear. I can actually create clusters, right? Combinations as I want to.
Okay.
And so what I'm saying now, what it looks like now is that as we're here looking at what was passed, we're saying, oh, I see half an apple and I see 1 orange, but the other fruits are over there. I'm going to the other side to look at it, to get all my siblings to vote 9, but to get as much as I can over to the other side,
Yeah.
right? And so we can do that carefully in conversation, and we can then I can go and say, what combination makes sense that I can get my brother Flaherty and my sister Murphy to also come so I can count to 9.
Yeah.
So the strategy here is how can we get to 9 as much as possible in clusters that benefits people.
Okay, so I appreciate that, thank you, because I am a visual learner. So the apples really help. But I just wanted to, you know, the whole idea was for us to have a transparent process, which is why I really love this way, right? I know my colleague, all of us are trying to figure this new way of being, but it forces us to really work in partnership and see the city as a whole, right? And that it's not just about what is in the best interest of just one individual. So that's really encouraging. What I struggle with, right? And this might just be, it's not so much the politics, it's just also just the nature of the way the system works, is that there might be people already in situations where they're negotiating behind closed doors. And even though we have this transparent process, that people have already sealed the deal on things that they're getting. And I have been here in this chamber in working in deep community with folks because I'm trying to honor the process. And this is a question about trust. And this is a question about integrity of the process, right? So if the mayor has already reached her 5 votes, hypothetically for whatever reason that is, then I'm just curious about how are we undermining the integrity of the charter amendment, and how are we really working towards making sure that all 9 or 12 or 13 of us are really doing our due diligence, because I'm not advocating behind the closed doors. I'm actually working and following your leadership, Madam Chair. I'm not going to fight for anything other than what this process is supposed to be for, and that requires us to have a level of integrity and a level of trust that everyone is moving in that direction. And what I worry about is people not honoring the integrity of what the charter amendment is supposed to do, which is keep this open, keep it in the public, and that we're not doing side deals. And so for me, I would rather us really figure out kind of like what that's gonna look like, because I think that that is also a part of the conversation, so that folks don't feel that we're not coming in here in the true sense of honoring what the charter amendment is supposed to do, which is get us all on the same page in a transparent public process.
Got it. Thank you. I'll go to Council Bach and Council Flaherty. I'll go to you in a second. I do think I should respond. Council Mejia, I heard a few things. You were elected by the people for a reason, and you bring a certain level of tenacity and hard work and consistency and continuity to your style, and I appreciate you. I think that different people have different learning styles, and we should always welcome spaces to safely be able to address different people's styles. That's one. And two, and I thank you always, because it also affords us or the public opportunity to also break that down and go through the different styles. One is not better than the other, but rather different styles. The second thing is in terms of transparency and in the spirit of doing this amendment. I understand what you're saying. I hear you loud and clear, and I think that I stand with you in terms of moving forward to address this with administration, to continue to build on this. The other thing that I heard about in terms of the process, I think that it's also a new process, and everyone is learning. And so far, I think that's why you've given so much grace in terms of, being patient. I thank you for having faith in me as the chair to be able to guide this or support or collaborate with you. And then the other piece of it, if you're standing with me, I want to make sure that I always advocate for everybody, even if you're not standing with me. Does that make sense? So in that spirit, I hope that we can get to the things that you advocated for in here and fight hard enough to get through it. And if people have somehow benefited from negotiations outside of this, right, then I don't have hardcore proof to show that, but I know it's maybe human nature or politics. And then hopefully, little by little, as we learn this process, we improve on that transparency.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Bach?
Yeah, a couple of things. One was just kind of in relation to something Councilor Flaherty asked about. In terms of rationales for things, I know that I asked specifically about as folks will remember, I kind of did some of the drafting on these omnibus little things related to the trees, adding the roles for the tree care and urban wilds, and then also the Hokies. And so when I saw the administration had accepted those but not accepted the whole amount, I asked about that, also this open streets one. And in each case, it was because they we had made the proposal based on the annual salary, but with new positions, they have to like post and bargain and set them up. And so basically they did a prorating based on how soon they think they can get those people online. So I just wanted to flag that for me, that was like a logical explanation. And so like that would not be an example of something where I'd look for us to override, like to put the 144, for instance, back on the project manager maintenance roles and urban wild roles, because they've actually accepted all of the roles. They just reduced the number. So that was a piece of feedback I got when I asked them about it. And I mentioned that now because I had to go before the questions to the budget folks yesterday. So I just wanted to flag that for colleagues. And then the other thing that I was going to say was just in relation to Councillor Murphy's comment. So we have to, whatever we vote on, if there's an override vote, it has to balance, right? We're overriding to change that fundamental order, and the number still has to add up to the same number at the end. That, as was clarified in the memo that the chair had requested and everything, it has to add up to the new number, not the old number, right? Because they updated revenue forecasts, and so, but it does have to balance. And so, I mean, personally, I would say, like, I do think, again, it's one of those things where it makes sense what the chair is trying to do here to try to get a sense of, is there a collective thing that folks would support? Because, well, procedurally, it would be possible to propose a bunch of balanced one-off overrides on the floor of the council. I think that just like we could have done that with amendments, it would be pretty unworkable, is my opinion.
Where does it say that it has to add up to a new number?
In the memo said that that we don't.
Which memo?
The legal memo. It's like this answer to your second question, or maybe your third. Sorry, I don't have the memo in front of me. Okay, Braden has it.
Do you have a copy of what you're talking about?
Sorry, I don't have the memo in front of me. Yeah, sorry, we'll ask
I
the
thought
chair.
you said from the chair, from the mayor?
Yeah, no, I said the memo they sent in response to the chair, the legal one.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, not, yeah, okay, listen, so this is the, right, so this is the bottom of page 6 on the memo where, well, so it says the answer,
Sorry, which page?
page 6, question 3. I assumed, Madam Chair, that these 4 questions were from you. Yeah, so where it says, you know, if the council amends the mayor's proposed.
1 second, please.
Okay, sure.
Is this one? From the legal? Thank you. Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah. So this was the question posed in the memo about if the city council amends the mayor's proposed budget and the mayor returns the budget with an increased total value as she did, may the council override the return budget with an increased total value, or is it bound to the total value of the initially proposed budget? Obviously, if the answer was that if we did any overrides, we had to go back to the original number, then we would lose that, like, whatever it was, 10.
So it's the new number plus the 10 million, right? That's what legal said.
It's not the new number plus the 10 million.
It's
the
the
new number, because
No,
the new number includes the 10.
meaning,
Yes.
no, give me a second, Council Block. The new number meaning the new number that includes the new 10 million, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
so what, I thought you were saying that it meant that we had to add up to the new suggested, for example, like if youth was only 2 million, whatever we override has to add up to that, but you mean overall the budget. I just want to clarify for everybody.
Right, what I mean is that whatever override, if the council voted to support an override, the net effect of all the components inside of that
The entire-
override
okay.
right, would need to be. But my only point was that if people tried to pursue a disaggregated thing where you were voting separately on overrides on each of these topics, then each of those votes, in order to be legal by the charter, has to be balanced. So
Actually, if we have to reach the new number, like now that the budget has been increased to 10 million, my question to Adam was, do we have to add up to just the old total budget number or the new number? That was my question.
Right.
And then now that we have an additional 10 million, if we, no matter how you do the math, if you override entirely everything, plus whatever they're suggested, it still doesn't reach the new amount.
It depends how you structure the override. I guess,
So the override was about 26 something, right? The total, like hypothetically, if we override everything, it was like 26 million, right? Like 26 something.
17 without the interest.
I'm talking about the entire thing.
Yeah.
If you override the entire thing, the 8.8 plus the 17 something, we're talking about 26 million something. And I'm saying, if you override the entire thing, it would have, we didn't increase the mayor's budget, the old number.
Right.
Now, the increase now is 10 million. Even if you overrided the entire 26 million, plus accepted everything that was recommended, which was a total of 7 million, we still wouldn't reach the new amount. Because it's only 7 point something million total.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
But we're
with
not gonna be able to override everything.
Right,
I'm not
but-
saying, I'm just doing,
Right, but what I'm saying is simply that if somebody, like, say that, all I was saying was to Councilor Murphy's point, if I got up on the floor and said, hey, I want us to override just the veto of the Mission Hill Link subsidy, right? So I want us just to, like, the mayor sent, given us a return budget, that's the budget that goes into effect if we don't take any override actions. What I want is for that number under BTD to go up 75,000 because I want the link thing back. Then I, as a councilor proposing that, would also need to propose what thing was going down, or else in my proposal, because the base we're building off of is the returned budget base.
or you can override what was already rejected.
Right, within, and it would have to be something within the things that we were, right, exactly. But the point is that what I couldn't do is just propose to the council that everybody vote with me on an override of the link item, because that would change the returned budget only on the up and not on the down, which then would cause a number above even the new number by $75,000.
Help me override this, but you don't know where it's coming from.
But yeah, you can't,
Right.
I would say by charter, that motion would be out of order on the floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Flaherty, then Councilor Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and obviously in response to our colleague's question, I happen to think that, that 112 is still an option for us. And I say that because the charter amendment doesn't speak to that.
Right.
We have a requirement, as just referenced by our colleague, that we have a requirement to pass a balanced budget. A 112 allows you to do that. Every single month, we have to pass a balanced budget. Department heads would have to come to the city council every single month, hat in hand with the request for their budget. This body, through you as the chair, would have to approve that. There is nothing in the charter amendment that speaks to any of this. So we're in the situation right now where we've sent back amendments that have been rejected, or in part, some of them are included in this resubmission. And then based on the charter amendment, we're being asked to either A, support it, or to override the veto. I think there's still another option for us, because the amendment that was passed doesn't speak to the 112. And I wouldn't want to defer to Corporation Counsel on this, because I did watch the hearing yesterday, and know that I have history here where we have counsel for the council. I would have put our attorney, I would have put Christine in the well and had them go point counterpoint. At the end of the day, Corporation Counsel is always going to interpret how best suits the administration, not the council. There's an inherent conflict there, which is why we have our own counsel. So with all due respect to Adam, who was here, spent a significant amount of time, I watched the tape, but he was doing more electric slide and habba than anybody, right? Because he was very cautious in terms of what words he used, because he has to interpret this in the most favorable light to the administration. There's an inherent conflict in that. And so for anyone saying that 112 is off the table, I would debate them till I'm blue in the face. I would have put Christine in the chair, and I would have had her go point counterpoint as our counsel to technically Corporation Counsel, who was supposed to be representing both of us, but clearly he's going to be making statements and comments in view of the greatest light and deference to the administration. That's kind of the world that we live in here. So anybody that says that 112 is off the table because of the budget amendment, I would argue that that's not the case. That's always an option. The amendment was silent to that. It's also silent to the date. We always have to pass the budget before the fiscal year starts in July 1st. There's nothing in the charter amendment that speaks to it has to happen on a certain time.
Right.
Further underscoring my point that 112 could be in play, that if we don't pass a balanced budget by the first of the year, we now have to do 112. We have to come in every single month. Not to burden you as the chair for the additional 12 months, but
I don't
that's
get a
how
vacation.
that's how I
I don't
interpret
get a
this.
vacation, is that what you're saying?
No, that's how I interpret the charter amendment and what it says to the overall charter and our overall responsibility to pass a balanced budget. That could come in the form of these amendments, the volley back and forth, or it could come in play that we decide we want to go to a 112. I still think that that's an option for us. Now, Corporation Council probably would not agree that that's an option. That's the last thing they want to deal with. But I would argue that that is an option because it wasn't spoken to in the amendment. And in the future, I would suggest to the chair that when we have Corporation Council down here, that we recognize that that their opinion tends to be skewed, and it's always more favorable to the administration. And I watched the questions, and I watched the duck and dodge and bob and weave, and it would have gave great boxing lessons. And I know that he stayed longer. Through you, the chair, you had asked him to stay longer, and obviously we appreciated the respect that was shown to the council, but wasn't a lot of answers. There was actually more confusion, frankly. And for those that were watching, if they weren't sort of in the mix having a front row seat, they probably didn't know what the heck was going on. But I would say that 112 is still an option for this body.
Thank you. I have a response to that, but I think that my colleagues are itching to respond to that. So in the interest of time, I'll talk less. Councillor Lujan, and if there is no answer by the time we get to Councillor Bach, then I'll respond. Councillor Lujan.
Thank you. Actually, I'm not going to opine on this. I had two things that I wanted to state. One is regarding the intra-department transfers. So let's say in the event that we are successful in overriding that, and the administration believes that that is a separation of powers issue. What happens then? What do we know? Did they?
They have an option to go to court.
Okay. Okay. And then I had an additional question that is at the moment escaping me, so we can go to.
They also have an option to allow.
Yes. I understand that. I am going to defer to my other colleagues while I remember what my other questions were. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted your train of thought.
No, it's fine.
Councillor Braden, then Councillor Bach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I really don't think, even though we could go to a 112, if in theory we could go to a 112, I don't think that's a good idea because so many of the programs that kick in, like especially our youth programs for the summer, if we go to a 112, that just throws the whole thing into chaos. I think we can't just hit go on July 1st and disperse that money. Then the other issue that we have a challenge with is that when we get into looking at the items, a lot of the stuff is all presented to us at a program level, and we're really talking about like line items and the more minutiae of the budget, but we don't actually get to see that. So it's really, we don't we don't have a good handle on what's contractually required because of bargaining agreements, etc., that the administration. So we're sort of dealing with we don't have all the information while we're making these decisions. And let's see, personnel.
I guess that's why they allowed for the money to hire.
Yeah, it's challenging. So, and then the other issue is the whole issue about the separation of like administration and finance. They've made it into two departments. They've split it up. So this year it's like a level funding level, but what are we to expect next year when it's two separate departments? Will they be coming to us and wanting more personnel to fully staff two departments instead of one A&F? So there's all sorts of questions like going forward, like what's the there are challenges that we will have to face next year that are changes within the administrative structure that we'll have to deal with next year, and we can foresee that we're going to be asked to pay more money for those things. So, so the A&F cabinet is now separated into two separate cabinets. And I'm just really thinking that, again, the issue I brought up with the council yesterday, Corporation Council, was that we have departments that we're funding that don't have authorising statutes, so that's something we need to clean up as well. Like we're being asked to fund something that isn't covered by statute because it has drifted out of the mayor's office into its own department, and all of those things need to be. And this is the one reason why we really wanted to get some money to, and I'm getting into the weeds here, get some money to do recodifying of the city code by an external professionals who do it. The administration's attitude is, well, we could put it over to a law school and let them do it. It's a very niche, specialised area that needs to be done by professionals, and I think that will help us. So city code hasn't been recodified in 50 years, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be cleaned up. And this you know, and then we'll go through and we'll find things that need to be fixed that we as a council will be. We could choose to fix them, or we could just leave it and let it sit there for another 50 years and just continue to pile up this morass. But, you know, I think just having being able to drill down and get a better understanding of them at a deeper level rather than just the big overriding number at the top of the page for a department or a program. We don't get program details further. We need a better breakdown at the program level of where the money's actually going. Youth workers, like I wanted 2 youth workers for Faneuil and Commonwealth and Faneuil housing. It seems reasonable that BCYF would have funding for youth workers in Alson Bryden, but like, where's that was vetoed. So it's just. And if we can't get it out of that bucket, then what bucket can I get it out of? Because we need those youth workers.
Right, I think that's thank you, Council Braden. I agree with what you're saying. I think that's what Council Mejia was alluding to, that the transparency should be reciprocated, and in good faith that we should be working together. And also, like, it clearly states here, you know, that the City Council, the Mayor and the City Council and the City of Boston shall hold budgetary powers together. And then here down further it says clarify budgetary procedures to take such other actions as are necessary to amend. And so I think that is what I mentioned yesterday in the hearing, that it leaves the opportunity for in the next filing, the ordinance to specifically specify that within the office of, as well as here, like as far as what is the process, right? So it feels incomplete, but it also gives the opportunity to say in this next process, you can clarify what the procedures are. So I hope that we can include a lot of this that we're learning as we are experiencing this new.
As I said yesterday, we've got training wheels on. This is the first time we've done this, so we're learning as we go. And I think as we go into this process next year, it'll be so much better. And I think kudos to you. You've led this process, and we're learning. And we're pretty close to the finishing line here and having a product that we can support. We're learning a lot as we go. So, and I really was impressed by how we all sat around the table as a council last week and figured it out, like in terms of amendments and what different people would support. And it was very good to see that level of collegiality and discussion about our priorities. It's very helpful. So I think, I'm very optimistic. This is a good process. I think it is democratizing our budget process, and I do feel that next year it'll be even better. But this year, we're still learning as we go.
Yeah,
thank you.
The wonderful thing is the ordinance will be filed post this experience, so hopefully it'll include a lot of this. Councilor Bach?
A couple of things, just on the question that Councillor Lujan raised, because the intras don't change any actual like budgets, I think that what would happen in practice would be that the administration would just start to spend monies and do things in the year, and then if the council felt like, and they would probably like make a decision, right, if like, I mean, they've already signaled maybe some of these things they do voluntarily, but they don't think that they are obligated to do any of them. If they then didn't do them, I actually think the onus would end up on us to sue on that point, because I think the reality is they would be the agent deciding what the departments did with a fixed amount of money. I think the good thing about any such dispute would be that it wouldn't be leaving a question of how much money was in each department's like account open, because that would be already settled. So it'd be a question of what they did, right? And personally, I'm convinced by the argument that they're making, but I think the way that would get pursued might have to be by the council. I did want to dispute with affection my colleague, Councillor Flaherty's characterization of the situation. I actually don't think a 1/12 is on the table. And I would say that, you know, legislative intent is a piece of these charter conversations, and I actually think like when we were all talking about this was a piece of the puzzle, and I know that Councillor Flaherty feels that having the 1/12 threat is important to the leverage of the council, but part of the dynamic that we dealt with in the last couple of years was like there was just that nuclear button and not the ability to kind of like winnow in on changes. And so although there's the ability to go to a 1/12 budget if there is no approved budget, the reality is that on the 8th of June, the council approved a budget, an amended budget, and that would have just gone into effect if the mayor had taken no action. Now the mayor sent us back her version with modifications. That goes into effect if we take no action. Then there's the question of if we take action, it's going to be a 2/3 override. It's not that the council doesn't have a vote on the budget, it's that what the council now has a 2/3 vote on is the areas of dispute between the mayor and the council, but we actually already have a passed budget in a way that we had not before. So although 1/12 is still an option, it's an option if the council had rejected the budget altogether. But because we passed with amendments, it's like we're not facing a 1/12 situation, and there is not a way to trigger that. And I would say that I know that there's probably like a political disagreement about whether that was like the right course for the council to take with the new power, but it definitely was part of the intention to have it turn into an actual constructive volley, where now I think it's, you know, $9.6 million, right, moved into the things that we prioritized, and the question is about the 7 and the intras. And yeah, so I would just say that I would agree with Corporation Council here that the 1/12 is not on the table.
I guess for me, it's not like you, I actually agree with you, but I think your response needs a little bit more. And I think it's because like step by step, right? It's actually telling us that, you know, after this step, you take this step. And I think that's where we get stuck. But I did pose it in terms of the way they filed it, because if we're taking action on one docket, that's we address one docket, and then the second separate docket separately, then was it a new budget, and now the charter rules apply. And so let's say we don't get to override the first docket because that's separate from the second docket. But because there's so much language showing like that it's connected, that it's one action, even though they filed the way that it's filed, I don't know. It just feels like it's two separate actions. And now we have a new budget that we can actually go to 1/12, and then the other one, the first docket rejecting, that we can just either fail on or, you know, not override, but then go to the second docket and say we want to reject that because that's a budget.
But to Councillor Flaherty's point about who works for whom, I think part of the administration's assertion is they showed up with one docket.
Councilor Block, hold on.
And the clerk told them to do two.
Councilor Block, hold on, because then we'll go back and forth, and then I think Councilor Lujan was first, and then we'll go back to you, Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you. Again, I'm not contributing to this 1/12 discussion, so sorry to sidetrack us right at the moment. But This is relevant to something the administration said yesterday. I have not had those discussions like Councilor Bach has had privately about, well, why did these decreases happen? But I did ask yesterday on the floor in this process. And it sounded like there was not like a calculus of like, we've calculated, this is how much the Office of Returning Citizens needs, or this is how much the Office of Black Male Advancement needs. It's like, we are just doing a reduction because we are just saying that this is a pool of money that we have. So it didn't seem to me, my take from what the administration was saying was that it wasn't some sort of calculus of what we decided is needed and we did the math. It's just, we reduced the amounts to an amount that we think that we could feasibly manage within the budget and not based on any calculation, which I think was an important comment made by the administration yesterday as we think about, the decisions behind why some things were reduced. And a lot of that was just to make the numbers work and not because of a sense that the department didn't need or couldn't spend or use the money.
They did try to make the argument that each departments that we were suggesting did not have the capability to build capacity in time, or that they didn't have the programming to spend the money in time within the fiscal year. And then
I didn't hear that. I mean, from the responses I also was not here for the entirety of it.
Right. And then you know what I mean? Like I refuted. I was like, no, because for example, Black Male Advancement, they are actually like thriving and building really fast, right? Like they are growing really fast. And this is a department that specifically it's, not a pilot, but it's a department that's going to show what the need, because it's growing that fast. And we know that, and we all agreed, and we said, you need more money. And we need to invest more in that. And then we did it in a way, and I made the points of, we did it in a way that eventually it would perpetuate less spending and overtime anyway. So even if this was some sort of like reform plan of eventually reducing overtime, let's pilot this, strategy until we see if it proves productive. But they didn't have a response to that. And I think that it does feel like that, and the frustration with all of us is when we suggested numbers based on need. And in the public and most of people that I got letters from, as a chair, I get a lot of emails. They were basically like, all of these things made sense. You guys were so thoughtful. You were careful with what you increased and what you were suggesting. And then the response to what you've just talked about just now, the response to be about saying, okay, you know what? This is what we're willing to work with them. And now I'm going to go find this new amount. We found this new amount. So we'll just give them this because that's within that number is all we are going to offer. And so that feels less thoughtful and less transparent. And I'm with you on that. Councilor Mejia, and then back.
I also just wanted to say that I agree with Councilor Braden regarding the codification of a lot of the changes that have been made. And, we need to just have more departments and offices codified, and it needs to be clearer for the general public. Also, I think it was Councilor Braden and Councilor Mejia that spoke to this process and being supportive and buying into this process. So.
Councilor Mejia? Thank you, Councilor Lucia.
Thank you. So I'm just really curious between my colleague Councilor Flaherty's point and Councilor Bach. Just trying to really understand what is at play here. Because in my interpretation of what was happening is that we allegedly had some power to make some decisions about the city budget. We exerted that power. And my thought is that we were now unpacking that power and debating about what it is that we were willing to accept or reject. And that based on that track that we would be able to, if we had to go through the end of August, going back and forth just to get us to a good place, that would be, what we would need to do to find some compromise that gives us a sense of engagement in the process. But it sounds like that this is right here, next June 29th, will be with her 5 votes that I'm sure has already, all of this is just kind of like right now.
Not quite.
Okay, so that's what I need to know coming on the June 29th, like what are we getting and where are we going with this if there is no real bargaining chips, because we've lost whatever little bargaining chips we've had, right? If, to Councillor Box's point, if we already approved the budget, like that means that all of this is, and I'm just trying to seek some clarity. Does that mean that we approved the BPS budget, right? And everybody already knows, like, I did that based on the political landscape, not because I really felt that they deserved it, and I let them know that yesterday. And the capital budget, and now the operating budget, it just seems like we have lost every single bargaining chip that we have to really be able to exert our power. So is this working session and what we're trying to do here and now, and all of the thousands of emails that we received for overriding the mayor's budget is not going to, is that null and void right now? And you're shaking your head, Councilor Farr. I don't know what that means, and you're shaking your head now. I just need to know what the bottom line is, because I'm really confused right now.
Okay, so we'll take one more comment and then we'll go straight into these numbers, because we need to address the.
It's gonna be hard with full council.
Sorry?
We don't have the full council, right? Yes, but it's hard.
Yes, it will be hard, but I think that it's worth going through the process. Because we have an idea, right? But I think we have the people that we need here. And to your point, let's get to the meat of it, and dive into it, okay? Yes, thank you. Okay, Council Flaherty?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And obviously, that's an accurate depiction from our colleague in terms of where we are today and the leverage and what we've given and et cetera. And also, and respectfully, and I appreciate the analysis of our colleague, I would just respectfully disagree in the sense of the legislative intent with the author, who obviously no longer serving with us. But I think the desired intent was to create an additional option as opposed to sort of we just did A or B, and to sort of inject and get that more more of the participatory piece of it. But I don't think the intent was to literally whittle down the leverage and power of the council from 7 down to 5. And the fact that the amendment doesn't speak to that, so my colleagues, I guess, interpretation is accurate as to how we are, where we are right now in the process. But I don't think the legislative intent was ever to cede our 112 capability and/or our ability as a legislative branch of city government, where it requires a majority for the capital, a majority for the operating and 2/3 for the capital, where in any situation we, through legislative intent, would have whittled down the 7 down to 5. Arguably, the administration now only needs 5 votes. We've shortchanged ourselves. So for that perspective, and from a legislative intent perspective, and because the amendment doesn't speak specifically to this, I think a 112 is still in play for this body, despite the fact that where we are right now and how it's played out to my colleagues' assessment, which I feel is accurate. I don't think for any point the author of the initial ordinance and/or the councilors, myself included, who participated in that process and also voted for that process, ever once thought that I would be ceding, as a legislative member of city government, I'd be ceding our 1/12th ability on behalf of this council, nor would I ever vote for anything that takes us from 9 to 7 to 5. We're going backwards. So while we wanted more options and we wanted more participation, never once did I think the legislative intent was to cede our 112 ability. And I'd fight tooth and nail to make sure that we keep the 112 ability. That was our, as reference, sort of our, I think it was reference, was it a nuclear button? It makes no sense for us to give that up. And to my colleague's point, yes, we've given the administration, we've given a lot up. We've lost all of our leverage. Our only leverage right now is the 112. And what I'm hearing is that we've arguably may have given that up, but yet nothing speaks to it. The amendment doesn't speak to it. The intent in the spirit of what we were trying to do doesn't speak to it. I participated in those hearings. I also voted for it. Never once was I of the impression that this was going to do away with 112, and we were going to go from requiring a majority of this body in a representative government elected by the people of Boston, a majority of our membership gets down to 5.
Thank you, Council Flaherty. So, unfortunately, it does state in the amendment exactly what we can do and what will happen after we do that. It does not, like, and I know I'm not an attorney, and we may defer, and again, this is open for conversation, but if it's saying specifically, the mayor may modify a budget approved by the council by returning it to said council with amendments to any line item provided, that a vote of 2/3 of the council shall be sufficient to override any budgetary amendments in whole or in part, or an overall budgetary veto by the mayor. And so because we had already approved a thing, like we had already approved a budget with our amendments, if we override it in whole, ours go into effect. But if we do it in parts, then it's a combination. And then, but if we do it overall, what was before is what we're overriding is her veto or rejection to default to what we have already passed. It's not saying reject it altogether to start prior to what we already passed. And I think that's where we kind of got ourselves. I agree with you. I think that to me, this is a great opportunity, but it's almost like I got excited and then I stopped. And there was no more explanation. And so, and again, this is a beautiful work. It's a great opportunity. We're here now, we're experiencing it, we're going through it, and I think that, again, there's opportunity for us to go through clarifying budgetary procedures through the ordinance that we'll file. Yes, Councilor Flaherty.
And based on that interpretation, then that means that we would be required to vote, we have to vote on every single modification or every single budget amendment.
Based on this, I can suggest, it's up to me to suggest whether we do it in part or in whole or overall. And I'm saying that I'm interested in doing it in parts. And so let's talk about that. What does that look like? Let's talk about the combinations of those parts. If we're clustering CAR 5 with something Council Mejia wants. Like, let's talk about that, and let's be strategic in how we file what my recommendations are going to be for Wednesday so that we can get the most out of this. And then the other thing that Council Bach was talking about was the overall, because the administration found $10 million and increased their own budget by $10 million. The new total is no longer minus $10 million. It's now plus $10 million. So my point was that, let's say we were successful in overriding everything that was rejected, plus accepting everything that is proposed, we would still not reach the new total amount, which is plus $10 million.
So we initially had rejected the first budget. We sent back modifications. They were in part rejected, in part
we amended,
accepted and reworked.
Right, we amended.
If we reject those amendments, so we've rejected the initial budget and we've rejected the amendments, you're telling me that that's on a 112 situation?
No, because we didn't reject the budget. We approved the budget with our
Right.
amendments. So what I would say is
So it was language.
It was language, yeah.
What we didn't, like,
Council Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of quick things, because I know you want to get to the thing at hand, and I would agree with you. I think what you were just characterizing, basically, it lays out this pathway that the council has gone down. That's what the chair is saying.
Right.
The council could still reject at June 8th, and then we would be back at the 112. But like as an option, right? But I think it's worth saying that part of the reason that the council had always talked about, going to a 112 is the idea that we said things and then the mayor was the only one who could make any changes, and then those changes didn't reflect what we said. That was always sort of the theory of why the council would allow the city to go to 112. The council now has the ability to propose amendments. And so I think it's, in my opinion, considerably less compelling for the council to say, we reject in the first instance, because there's an opportunity for the council to say, this is what we think would make a better budget. And I think there is a difference between, and I think not for nothing, even the accepted amendment amounts that we're talking about here are like considerably more than we used to get in changes between the initial and the revised resubmitted budget in most years.
Mm-hmm.
Most years you didn't see $10 million of council proposed changes go into the new budget. I don't know if it's ever happened. It's certainly, last year what we did was with a supplemental. It wasn't even to the fundamental budget. So I just do want to flag for, to Councilor Mejia's point, where's the power? The council has substantially changed the budget already under the chair's leadership in ways that it previously was not able to do. So, I think, you can always debate the half a loaf, full loaf, and the question of whether, where brinksmanship makes sense. But I also think that there's a difference between a problem with the system and people disputing how the council should use its leverage, right? The BPS vote conversation, I think there are folks who feel like we should have held that vote in order to get things out of BPS, and there are folks that feel like because of the situation with DESI, it was important to do the vote of confidence, right? And to me, that's a political discussion. It's not a debate about the budget powers. And similarly here, I think as the chair just said, we've gone down this path. I think that you can have a debate about whether it would be, politically advantageous to reject and force a resubmission in the future. To me, because we can make changes, it's sort of abdicating the ability to be constructive, in my opinion, but that's a political opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The last of the last, right? And then we'll get to work. Councilor Mejia.
And I don't want to apologize for being slow, so I am who I am. But I just need to hear this one more time.
We can see that your sinus is acting up today.
So to Councilor, just so that I can really understand this, right? So if we have 9 votes to override, then we have passed the version of our budget.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right? And that is where the power allegedly lies.
Right.
Right? However, we're not going to exert that power. What we're going to do instead is figure out how we can get to something that will be advantageous to all of the siblings in the room. Is that what we're like?
Well, I'm saying that if we, so for example, there's about 7, I don't know exact total, sorry, I had it on a spreadsheet, 7 point something million that the mayor suggested to allow. And we can address that by just, we can address that in docket number 2, right? I can look up the docket number. The second one, which was 0763. And we'll say, yeah, thank you. We got part of what we asked for. And then in docket 0762, to address that docket of the rejections, we can go in part and try to carry over what's missing. Does that make sense? And so I know sometimes I speak in abstract words, but so if we get the 7 million from docket 0763, and then we go in 0762, and we say, okay, what can we get out of that? We know that some people here may not agree with moving funds around. And we don't know yet, we haven't gone through that. But some people here may not agree with the full amount that we were taking out of BPD over time. And so we're gonna have that discussion and say, maybe CAR 5 is one thing that's really important, maybe the business thing that Mejia was really important, and maybe that's a cluster that makes sense, and that's the choice that we make. It's not a lot, it's not 13 million, it's only 2 million. Maybe we can do that. Because I think the administration actually helped us out in this part because they found $10 more million, which is in the 7 million that they suggesting to pass. And now we can still take some portions, not in personnel with BPD, not in anything that's gonna affect them, but we can take a little bit in OT because we know it goes into reserve, and we disagree, right? We said we're setting precedents in how you can fund good things and eventually decrease in overtime anyway. And that's, at least that's my position. And that's what I think the direction we should go in. Okay, let's go through the amendments. You guys ready? You excited? Okay, I have this spreadsheet from, everyone has this one? Okay, let's work off of that one first. And at any time, raise your hand or light for questions or suggestions to do this. We're all doing this together as we go, right? So for the first appropriation, the 448 for Department of YEE, the administration is agreeing or suggesting for contractual services in the amount, we asked for $4,486,667 for youth jobs, direct COB payments, and the response was they rejected $2,290,000 of it and accepted or suggested only $1,667. I won't go in that much detail, but now that you see sort of like how we're going, I'll only talk about the department, the amount, and what's accepted next time, okay?
Just so for process, so that I am not disrupting your flow here, but I'm just curious, is this where we would ask questions in regards to when we talk about youth jobs? Is this an opportunity to talk about, we were talking about exponential learning? Is this where some of that funding could be allocated towards to support some of those initiatives?
We can't amend, right, what was suggested.
Right, no, it says youth jobs, right? So under youth jobs, it's...
These are the amounts, yes. I was saying that there were new dollars that went into that department. I think we can actually override that interdepartmental one because it was new dollars coming in. And I think I can file it and explain these are monies that we are bringing in from wherever we bring it in already. So we're creating a new line item. And I'm saying but I want to go all through what came from the administration first, because that interdepartmental stuff is not on here.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and then we'll address those, okay? So I'm gonna go down the list and then we'll go through the stuff that was vetoed. Does that make sense? And then YEE, next one, the administration is suggesting 1.3. For MOH, special appropriation, BHA payments for returning citizen voucher, we asked, and BHA homeownership pilot, it was combined. And I think one was 1.5, the other one was it 800,000, or how did we suggest it? Let me look at my list. Yes?
May I speak? I just want to make sure that this isn't the $2.5 million that was, I filed an amendment for, and that Councilor Brock filed an amendment for, based on the city coalition to support the city-based vouchers. And I think is that it?
Yes,
And then, so if that is the case, I just want to call into question the brief amendment description, because it wasn't actually pegged towards returning citizen vouchers or BHA homeownership pilot. Like, I just want that to be clear, that it was just for further expansion of the city-based voucher program. And just would also like to hear from my colleagues that that too is what their understanding is.
I don't see another one, so I think we're talking about the same thing. But you're saying that's not actually the program, it was just for,
It was just a supplement. So, in the operating budget, the mayor proposed added an additional 2.5 to its allocation of 5 million, brought it up to 7.5, and we proposed matching that with an additional 2.5. I think, there were discussions about, I personally, I love the city voucher program, and we had talked about, expanding it for other reasons, but for this, it wasn't pegged towards returning citizens or to a home ownership pilot. But I open that to my colleagues to correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but I don't think I am. So,
Councilor Buck?
There was conversation at various points about, maybe with the expanded money, there would be an opportunity to do some set-asides for the coalition's very focused on IDP project-based, right, things, and also there was the conversation about returning citizens. And so I think that in the language that's in the order, it sort of references the possibility of those set-asides. It doesn't say this is for all that, but I think it was like, in that conversation, that did get memorialized as kind of like a piece of the puzzle. Now, that could be 5 vouchers, right? Like I don't think that the council expressed a specific intent there, but I do think that I think the deeper IDP affordability piece is also referenced in the council language here.
I appreciate that. I just, don't want to seem like we lobbied for a restrictive 2.5 million, because that's not. And I know that I probably was the one that brought up something regarding returning citizens, but I just want to make sure that we are not saying that the administration, for the record, that we're not saying that it must be for these two, but this is something that the council and the body of the council cares about. So that we're not saying administration go forth and do this with the additional 2.5 or whatever it ends up being. So I just want to clarify that for the record.
Okay. So I'm going to go down this list, and if there are any types of clarification like that, I think that if we're passing it, it's what it's stated. If there's a miscommunication of how they've listed it here, we certainly can reference back to the original file, the council's filing, and correct them. And I think there's room there to correct it. Obviously, it's the way we worded it. So please feel free. But for now, I think in the interest of time, we're going through the list to just sort of go on record, what's on the table in terms of recommending to pass. And I think that it looks like, correct me or make suggestions, I'm going to suggest that we pass this thing in whole so that we can address the other stuff. The override, the other items, unless we're picking it apart. And I'm not sure, does anyone here have any suggestions? And I'm not sure if doing it in whole means that we can't do the first docket in part, which is interesting because it's supposed to be one action, but 2 dockets. So now it separates the action, but yet it's a response to what's in the veto. Anyone? So
I don't think I understand what you're saying.
So the administration filed 2 dockets. One
At the clerk's request, yeah.
Sorry?
At the clerk's request, right?
What are you, their lawyer?
No, I'm just saying that I think like the clerk works for us. It's like if, yeah.
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 Okay. So, at the clerk's request, I mean, the administration filed 2 dockets. It's supposed to be one action. The action is rejection with veto with suggestions, right? Or their amendments. What I'm saying is, if we pass, if this docket number 2, which is the list here, in whole, because they're making the argument that it's one action. Like my argument was, it's a separate docket, now it's a new budget. We can actually default to the charter. We can use the amendment rules in terms of not overriding this, but we can actually address this as a new budget. Can we go to Rule 112 and have buy-in 60 days? Because it's a new docket, it's a new budget. It's no longer a response to the action in the amendment. In the first docket, that's the case, but then they separated it. But they made the argument that it's all connected because the language in one says this is a response to the other thing. And really, it was the clerk's office who told them to file it that way. What I'm saying now is we can amend, reject, accept, I'm sorry, not amend, accept, reject, or override. We can override or accept in whole, in part, or overall. But if we go to docket, the second docket, which is the list of everything that they're suggesting, and we do it in whole, then does that prevent us from taking apart the first docket if they're saying essentially it's all connected?
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I mean, what I would say is we actually only have one of these 2 dockets that actually has a tax order. So when we talk about like there's only one of these dockets that's actually substantive. The other one is basically a cover letter. So like to me, there's one, it's not like we have filed 2 separate like tax order detail with all the language that you need in a budget like orders in front of us. There's only one. So to me, the like cover letter docket is sort of a ceremonial thing that the clerk asked them to do, but I don't think that it creates something where we could take a budget establishing action and then end up with a duplicate set of budgets. I would say we only have one tax order docket in your committee right now.
Which one is that? The first one?
Whichever one, sorry, I don't have.
The first one?
Whichever one the actual backup is attached to.
So are you saying that we can only override or not override?
Yeah. Sorry, what do you mean by override or not override?
The second docket is where the explanation is on what the suggestion is.
Right, I'm saying that's the real thing. The docket that's a single sheet that says, hey, I sent this back to you is not the real thing. That's just a cover letter that the clerk asked them to file. That's.
Except we could override what we originally filed, right?
Right, but that would be, I would say, still a vote on the substantive docket. It wouldn't be a vote on the one-line letter.
Except those things are no longer here in the second in the second docket. Like there are things missing.
Right, so we could override, that's basically us substituting back the like stuff from ours. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying that I don't think that we've got 2 actionable dockets. Like we'd be reversing this thing that she has in front of us back to our stuff.
But we do. That's the problem. They filed it wrong. Whatever the filing is, there needs to be clarity. We do have 2 dockets, right?
Yeah, but I would say that only one of them is a substantive docket.
I
that
understand
should-
that
yeah.
you're arguing on,
Yeah.
on behalf of the administration, and I understand that.
No, I
Thank
mean,
you.
I think it's like I think if the issue was contested, it would be like,
I get it.
yeah.
I understand the side that you're taking, the position you're taking, I understand. I'm saying that in the second docket where the tax orders are listed, we don't have everything listed there to override what we disagree with. Essentially, if the administration disagrees
I
that we cannot,
I think
I'm sorry. If the administration disagrees that we cannot override a thing, they should have listed it back and just rejected it. They don't have, it's not clear that they have the power to say, you can't even address this in this docket, so we're not even going to file it in the report.
Madam Chair, are you talking about the intros?
The intros,
So I think that if the council were, like, I think the way that you would do it is, say the council wanted to override completely what the mayor had sent, we would say, I'm just saying that we would vote on that, like, that substantive docket, but I think what it would look like is you'd basically staple our order of June 8th to the thing and say, the council has overridden this docket and reverted to this packet of June 8th. I don't think the fact that our thing is not reproduced like perfectly there blocks us from doing that. I mean, then there's the whole legal argument about the intros. But yeah, so I think we would just make because that's a formal action of the council, we can just refer to it in our override. But I wouldn't say that makes us going back in action on that first ceremonial docket instead of on the substantive one. That makes sense. But what I'm not trying to say is that you couldn't do what you're saying in terms of overriding, including the things that aren't.
You are,
on the
or you're not saying
administration's-
that?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
Okay.
that. I'm just saying that the action would be on the second docket. We would be like, yeah, no, we're overriding. We're going back to the council's version of June 8th, see this like filed committee report passed by the council. If that makes sense.
right, so now, do you understand my point that we cannot do it as in whole because they didn't include what was missing? We have things to address that they didn't include, so if we accept it in whole, we couldn't do that because now it's essentially their amended version or suggestion that goes into effect with the missing parts.
I don't think
Councilor Bach,
sorry, Madam Chair, maybe.
no problem. The list of what they sent back
Yeah.
excludes what they disagreed with, right?
Right.
They just basically said, this interdepartmental stuff, this is why the rules are wrong. Like, you didn't follow the rules, right? We have disagreement on some items, and that legal has agreed with us that when it comes to stuff that wasn't already appropriated, that we can actually move it and we can actually create those line items. And so there are some disagreements that is missing from the list of what they're recommending to pass. And so you're saying that we would attach and say, we're going back to what, if I go in whole and I pass what they're suggesting, it excludes the stuff that they disagree with, which I want in here. So I cannot do this in whole. We'd have to go line item by line item, and then what? Bring in the stuff that they filed in the first docket because they didn't mention it in the second docket.
I think, and happy to talk about it at greater
No, we're
length,
here.
not on the floor. Okay, just, so I think that from a like fundamental perspective, if the chair produces a committee report that says, like, you know, my recommendation is that the council override in this way that's balanced, that iterated all the things that were, each of which had a footing in our prior thing, right? To your point, it's not a new amendment, it's an override, right? Like, I think that you could write that out and you could refer to things that are not like written up in the right way in their order, and you could refer to things that are not and attach that, and that would be all perfectly
That doesn't.
licit.
Yeah, but that still brings me back to our point that recommending that this thing passes in whole, docket 0763, is not the right way to go. because I don't want to get stuck in some sort of legal back and forth.
I
You-
see.
You
Oh,
accepted
okay.
this as is.
Okay,
You
yeah,
did
yeah,
that. That's a docket. You said yes. What do you
Yeah,
want?
I
No,
see.
I don't want to do, I don't want to take that risk, right?
Okay, yeah, no, I did not understand that was your point. Yeah, I agree with you that that would be messy. If you
That
just
would
had a
be-
one-liner,
yeah.
like, oh, we're going back in whole, like, we're overriding, it would be messy.
They'll be like,
Yes.
you passed
Yes.
docket 0763. Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Council Flaherty?
Just for my education, so. Are we treating this as a resubmitted budget, or are we treating this as a brand-new budget? Or, as my colleague is saying, neither,
Continuation of,
right? Because obviously, true. Right, but it's a new process, right? And obviously, if you look at the underlying language, the initial ordinance, which didn't speak to a lot of things that we're encountering right now, whether that's legislative intent, whether that just didn't incorporate them, maybe we missed a couple things, but it's a case of first impression, arguably, and so it's going to be in the interpretation and in the legislative branch through the chair, so I guess, but depending on how we view what it is, determines what maybe measures we take on our end, so it's, just want to make sure we have open lines of what we can do, what we can't do, and by the way, who says we can't do that? Because we are the legislative branch, we're a representative government elected by the people in this new process that this body also helped create, but may have missed a few things, and/or we're leaving it to the interpretation of Corporation Counsel, who will always defer in best light to the administration. Those are just the facts. And I've been here 20 years, I've seen it. Hardly ever does Corporation Counsel rule against the administration and side for the council, which is why we have counsel for the council. And once again, I would ask through the chair if there's any questions on that, sort of the legal interpretation side. We have counsel, and it's Christine O'Donnell.
so,
Who's our lawyer, who works for us all the time, full-time, every day.
every day. So, I think that, I mean, I held a meeting and both of the attorneys, Christine and Michelle, weren't in. And we came into the hearing yesterday, now we're in the working session, and I have Monday reserved. And so I think we still have time to go back and forth with them.
And I think that's helpful, Madam Chair, for two reasons. One, they're both attorneys. They represent our best interest as a legislative branch of city government, and they worked here during the creation of this ordinance, not only working for this body, also working alongside in partnership with the administration and Corporation Counsel. So if anyone has sort of historical knowledge on legislative intent, what was put in, why it was put in, what was not put in, and why it was not put in, I would argue it's Christine and Michelle, and I would suggest through you, the chair, that they be present on any interpretation of the charter, the amendment, and what we're looking to do here. I don't want to shortchange ourselves from the budget process, and if it's coming down to semantics that we didn't reject without prejudice and then submit amendments, if we didn't use those appropriate words, or if we rejected and now we're getting a resubmission, or are we getting a new budget, or so there's many different ways to interpret this, and if we're depending on Corporation Counsel to give us what they determine the accurate reading of it, I just want everyone to have their eyes wide open. They don't work for us. They're supposed to work for us. They tend to lean to the administration side. So if we want fairness, if we want to make sure that we're getting the full scoop, I suggest that Christine and Michelle be in any and all of those discussions.
I'm certainly open to, I haven't heard from Christine, but I'm certainly open to bringing her in. I have already worked with Michelle Goldberg, and she agrees with Councilor Bach and what we've discussed today.
Good. And one other thing, through the chair and obviously the council president as well, is if we don't pass this budget on the 29th, I would caution and urge that when we, normally we would adjourn, I would suggest that we recess, we keep it open. If we have to come back here on a Thursday, which we've done in the past, we literally have up until Thursday at till 11:59 p.m. to pass a budget. So just caution language in terms of how we're adjourning and recessing. Those words matter when we close out, particularly in light of the fact that if we don't have the 112 ability, then we need to be real cautious in terms of when we're discussing it, when we're voting on it, in the language that we're using to call for the vote and/or to recess or adjourn. And so in light of that, if we don't take action on the 29th, we reserve our right as a legislative branch to stay open, to stay in session. We would call a recess, not an adjournment, and we would come back at the call of the chair at any time that's convenient for this body to continue to deliberate. We have the ability up until June 30th at 11:59 to pass a budget. So I just want to throw that up there, food for thought. If we don't come to terms on this on Wednesday, all is not lost, particularly if we don't have a 112. We may want to come back here on Thursday and grind it out with the administration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, do we want to have those discussions before continuing our working session? I mean, where it sounds like that's where people are. Councilor Mejia?
Oh, Councilor Murphy.
Councilor Murphy?
Before me.
Yeah, so I would go one step further than what Councilor Flaherty said, and I would also ask that the clerk come down. He's very capable and very well-versed, and if he could explain for us, because we're kind of assuming, and assumptions are, I think, what's putting us in this circle of semantics. So I would ask him personally, but I think for us as a body to hear directly why he suggested it be that way would really help us moving forward on then why we got ourselves into this. And Councilor Flaherty did touch on it already, but my question all along has been, when we passed with amendments, should we have rejected without prejudice with the amendments, and what difference would that put us in this position now? I know that is what I didn't have the votes to back me, but myself and two other councilors did do that with the school budget, hoping that, reject without prejudice to keep the line of communication open. So if you know, Chair, or if any of my colleagues in the room know what different position we would be in right now if we had rejected without prejudice, knowing that we were going to come back to it anyway.
We would have had 60 days to take action.
Even though it went past the June 30th date?
60 days from the date,
From June 8th.
yeah.
Okay, is that true?
If we would have rejected, is it true? I'm sorry.
I'm asking you, it could be, okay, that's good to know.
Oh,
So we
good.
would have had 60 days, you're saying that
So I think
from
what's
June
happening
8th?
here, excuse me, I think what's happening here too is also, I'm offering you information, you disagree.
I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying good. I'm glad I know now. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm glad to know that we would have had 60 days, not just the rest of the month until June 30th to pass it.
Let me clarify. I think not particularly just you or you, Council Murphy, but I think other councilors may disagree with what my response is.
I'm not disagreeing.
Not you, other councilors, Council Flaherty or Council Bach disagree with Council Flaherty. Council Flaherty may disagree with what I'm saying. I'm saying that we are disagreeing. And I would like to, I've opened this up, right? I've said I'm allowing conversations and suggestions and input. I can also, at some point, have to make a decision. I think I'll have to think about the schedule and what we have in play and make the best decision that I can come up with. And while I'm entertaining the conversation or taking suggestions and feedback, I have a position. If you disagree, it's another thing. And I'm saying I've heard from Attorney Goldberg, and this is what she said as well. If we want to now add another attorney to say the same thing or different, or bring something different, I've heard that too. So I've said something, that there's a disagreement, then I backed it up with what Attorney Goldberg have said, and then there's still a desire to get that reinforced. That's not a reflection on me, that's a reflection on what people feel. And so if there's a need to continue, I will make that decision. Councilor Mejia?
Thank you, Chair. So I stepped out, so I may have missed some of the comments that my colleague was making in regards to the integrity of the information that we are working under, right? Like, there were some questions about the clerk and how it was filed and all of the stuff that has gone down. And I guess for me, what would be extremely helpful is understanding what the bottom line is, right? Where are we? Where is any real power, if we have any? And if we do exert our ability to interpret things the way we choose to interpret them, because that's a matter of choice oftentimes, right? And legal counsel can help us debunk these things. I do believe, even walking in here speaking with the council administration, is that they do not have our best interests in mind. And I feel, for me, I go to a place of feeling, I feel like there's been some compromise of the process. And I think that it makes it really difficult for me to move in a very thoughtful manner, because this is the first time that we're going through this process without this type of clarity that I need to be able to make very informed decisions in terms of what I'm voting on or what I'm voting against, and how that vote impacts the things that our colleagues, and myself included, are advocating for. So that's kind of like where my head is at, based on, the back and forth that I'm hearing. Because if Michelle, Attorney Goldberg, and Christine have weighed in, and they're supposed to represent us, and it seems like we have lost everything in the sense of like, or at least that's what it sounds like, and maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but it just doesn't feel like we're moving in a direction with the tools and the ammunition to go to war. And I feel like we're going to war with Skittles. And I want to go to war with armor on. And I really feel like I'm at a loss right now. And I don't know, when I think about my colleagues and the 13 the 13 of us, I hope that this process is about the city as a whole and us working collaboratively to flex that power. And it doesn't feel like, to me, we have now the tools to be able to do that.
We didn't even get to the conversation yet. That's the thing. Like, we haven't even got to it yet.
Oh, damn.
And we're still stuck on the amendment and the wording in the amendment that I did not write. You know what I mean? So so here we are. We all have tried to break this thing down, and we can all agree that there's so much clarification needed. And I can assure you, and I can't read minds, that even Mayor Wu probably feels frustrated with this wording or lack of clarity. And so we are all looking at this and trying to figure it out together. And I definitely don't feel, yes, the administration have their own vested interests, and we have our own vested interests for the community and what we advocated for. But the fact still remains is that the wording is the wording. I've consulted with Michelle Goldberg, and I've gotten the same thing that corroborates what Attorney Cedarbaum have said. If we need Christine to reiterate or to say different or maybe add to, that's okay. But I'm saying that I have to make, in the interest of being productive with this session and the budget, the whole budget season, I would like to get to a point where we can actually get to the work, to the discussions. Or we review this amendment one last time, and then we get to the conversation. I've broken it down to the best of my ability several times. And if folks are feeling like, you know what, I still disagree, let's make it simple. I still disagree. And because we missed a hearing, or because we didn't come to the meetings, or because we didn't read our emails, we want another conversation. I would have to say that we're going backwards. I would have to say at least let's get to the conversation so that I can have something to work with on the weekend. And then on Monday, I would still invite Christine and everybody to come in and give us a little bit more clarification, while I try to exert more patience so that we can actually get to this. But I think that's where I am right now. I think we disagree, and folks are feeling like there's a tool that we can use, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter remains, again, this thing is just not clear enough. And because it's the first year, we are going through it, and now we realize we got to a point where we're like, oh snap, what's next? And that's where we are. And I'm saying again that the beautiful thing about that is if when we file that ordinance for the Office of Participatory Budget, we can actually give some of those clarifications. Hopefully. If you, would you guys like to take a break for lunch and then we have this discussion, please? Okay. Let's break and look, can we say 30 or 40 minutes? How much do people need? 1:30? It's 1:06. 1:35?
I want to get out of here as soon as we can.
Okay, so 24 minutes. Cool, 1:30?
Oh, let me be sensitive to staff. Whatever is best for staff.
Staff? Okay, 1:30 is good? All right, break time. We are back in session. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is just jump right in. We're going to address this list. Shane is creating or has created a spreadsheet, so it's easier to read, but if we can talk about them one item by item. If the folks that are not advocating for these things are not here, then we'll table it for later as they come in. The first one is for the line item decrease is BFD, Boston Fire Department Equipment, line 55400, lease purchase, to increase, to take out $565,000 to increase it in Public Works Department Personnel Services, to give us 15 Hokies for Alston Brighton, 1 in Chinatown, 2 in East Boston, 2 District 4, 2 Roxbury or District 7, 2 for Fenway, Mission Hill, Beacon Hill, and 2 for District 3 and 2 citywide, a total of 15 Hokies. Oh, sorry. So essentially, from our filing, our amendments. You guys should have it, if you go to page.
This one?
Interdepartmentals, yep. And basically, if we address the interdepartmental and we cross-reference with what the mayor sent back.
Yeah, so go to we're starting from the second page.
Oh, you started second page.
This is that same page. I think we're just starting on the second.
Okay, yep.
Sorry, guys, I should have read what I said earlier, that the agenda will address the inter and then the intra. All right? So if we can cross-reference what was recommended by the administration for the 15 Hokies, if you have it, just let me know. But I found mine, and it says that we are essentially, the administration recommended to accept $482,584.
Where is it on this chart?
Oh, no, okay. So I'm taking the narrative summary of amendments, and I'm going to address the interdepartmental amendments, and then I'm cross-referencing it with what was accepted. Yes. So I'll go the first bullet, item by item, each amendment, one by one, and then I'll go to what the mayor accepted or rejected or whatever. And I'm reading out originally what we wanted and what was accepted. And any comments, I'm just taking comments or feedback so that I can make a decision on how to recommend the filing, okay? Sounds good? And I think we'll get more done because it's not an argument. It's not me making a decision right now or us making a decision right now. It's Shane is taking your comments and putting it next to that line item. So instead of just addressing the administration's recommendations, we will address what we filed, what was accepted, how much of it, what wasn't accepted, and what do we need to do about it, and we're taking notes.
Thank you, and we'll know what's accepted based on this chart that we all have before us.
That's right.
And then can I just request that when we're looking at a bullet point in our filing, that you direct us to where we should also look in this document as well?
Okay, I will. I will give you the appropriation number.
Okay, thank you.
Cool? All right, thank you. Okay, so appropriation number 311. You see where the admin change to amend took out 200,000?
Yep.
Thank you, Teacher Lujan. And you see accepted amount $482,584. And so, Shane, is it okay if is it okay to call it Shane?
Of course.
Thank you. Is it okay if I ask you to just create a column after the description, the amendment description, and put exactly what was accepted, even if it's 0? Thank you. Okay, and so as we go, I'll list it for the record, what was accepted or wasn't, and then I need your feedback on it. So happy to have you back, Councilor Braden. No worries. So we are trying to consolidate information or from amendments, our amendments, to what was accepted or rejected or changed. We're going to work from our narrative summary, and I'm going to start with interdepartmental. That's page 2. Okay? And I'm on bullet 1, addressing the Hokies, and on the chart that was sent back from the administration with the changes, it's line or appropriation 311. And then you'll see there that it says that we recommended, that's because they added the waste reduction, but we actually recommended $565,000 to be taken out of Boston Fire Department equipment, unspent funds or lease purchase. And then they recommended that we not do that. Instead, that we get the $565,000 for 15 Hokies. Instead, that we got less, but it's combined, so it's not clear how many Hokies that is, or, I mean, we could do the math, or, yes.
I think the reason, my understanding is one reason why they reduced it somewhat is that they won't be able to hire those people on July 1st, so there'll be a little of a lag time to get them in place. So that would, it wouldn't need a full year's funding for them. Is I think the way that's part of reason why it might have been reduced.
At this point, then, for this one, because it's the same department, they basically consolidated by department. And so for this one, they combined the $118,000 that we recommended for 2 waste reduction FTEs. They put it all in one department, in Public Works. But they said, we're not going to accept all of the Hokies that you're asking for, because for the reason that Council Braden just stated, we are going to accept total amount of $584,000. I mean, dollars. And so I want to hear your comments about what you think about that. And instead of us like trying to make a decision by each item, I just need you to give me your feedback, what you would like to do with that, any questions or concerns, and then move on to the next thing. Okay, are there any objections or any, like, do you guys think we should contest that, or is that fine? They can't hire enough. That was, by the way, Council Braden, that was the explanation for every reduction. Yeah.
You know, I know Councilor Braden, this includes Councilor Braden's, but it also includes other councilors who are not here in their recommendations for Hokies. So I don't know if they feel differently, but I just want to, you know, put that on the floor.
Anyone else? So should we accept it as is? If each Hokie is about 37.66, then I'm just going to try to see how many Hokies that actually gives us. Because if you're accepting the waste reduction, then that reduces it even further. Yes, sorry, Council Flynn?
So the reason for the reduction is that the Hokies would not start right away, so there would be some savings. Is that what I heard?
So that if the money can't be spent all in fiscal year 23 because they can't hire fast enough to hire all 15 Hokies, they're suggesting about 9 Hokies instead. They're saying realistically we can hire about 9 Hokies. What I did is I just took $482,584 and I subtracted the $118,000 for the 2 waste reductions FTEs, and then I divided that by 37,000, and you get about 9 Hokies instead.
The only question or concern I would have, Madam Chair, is you and I and Councilor Baker represent the area in and around Mass and Cass. Instead of decreasing the Hokies, is there an opportunity for us to maintain the number we requested and focus more on the Mass and Cass area on clean streets, making sure our streets are as safe and clean as we possibly can, but the residents of Dorchester, Roxbury, South End, South Boston are really asking us to keep the area in and around Mass Ave that's spreading as clean as we can. But as the councilors that represent that particular area, I'd rather not see a reduction in Hokies. I think they play a critical role in the city and the quality of life issue for, and as a district city councilor, that's as about an important job as I could think about.
Okay. Councilor Brady, could you explain the delay again for me?
Delay?
Yeah, in terms of it's not it's not reducing the amount of Hokies, but rather that there's a delay. Do we know?
We can't hire them, we need to have advertised them months ago, and we can't even start to advertise them before July 1st, so it might be September before we can get them hired.
So it's reducing the money for those 3 months or so?
Yeah. And, you know, from my perspective...
So we're still going to get 15 Hokies, but they're just going to start like in September, so we don't need all of that money?
I think that's my understanding of it, but it may be wrong.
Okay. Well, it makes sense if it takes them that long to hire.
Madam Chair, I understand that. I just think in and around the Mass and Cass area, but in and around those impacted neighborhoods, I don't think we necessarily can wait until September. We need to get them on the streets like tomorrow or
Yeah.
Saturday. That's how focused we need to be on Hokies. I'd like to see them start Monday, start collecting resumes tomorrow. I know I'm being facetious here, but you know, we can't wait. We can't wait in and around the Mass and Cass area. We need to improve quality of life for residents, you know, on Friday or Saturday.
Sounds like we need to have a conversation with Mayor Wu and ask her that she prioritizes moving Hokies to Mass and Cass for sure. I'm with you. Looking forward to that conversation. Okay, so it sounds like we're still, I guess when you reduce the full amount, and I'd have to do the math to see if that's actually accurate. So still, it doesn't take away the 2 FTEs for waste reduction, and that's 118,000 because that's listed here. It didn't take it away, unless it's doing that. It's also subtracting the 3 months' pay because it takes that long to hire. So we'd have to see like how much money that is for the 3 months, and see if we got to the right amount. And I can do that if you guys give me a second. Councilor Mejia.
Thank you, Chair. I think what I'm hearing both of my colleagues say is I agree with Councilor Flynn in regards to the urgency around the Hokies. And just so that I understand exactly what we are going to be yaying or naying or just supporting here, is that there's a need for more Hokies, but right now the budget has come back with less, and that is because we don't have the infrastructure to hire more, so we're going to be starting off with 9. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I understood it to be that, but the reverse is true. That, for example, not that we're reducing when we're reducing it to 9 Hokies, because when I did the math, I was like, oh, that's just 9 Hokies. But that instead, it's because it would take the administration July, August, all the way to September, so 2 months really, 2 months to hire. So still 15 Hokies, but they took away the 2 months amount of money, the pay, because it doesn't need to be there if it's not going to be spent, if they're not going to start until September. And what Councilor Flynn is saying, we can't wait till September.
That's right.
what are we going to do about that? And I think that's a conversation with the mayor to say, we need to prioritize this. And
So we should keep the original request, right? Because we're going to stress for the urgency to fully fund what is this moment requires. No?
no, I agree that if it takes 2 months, why let the money sit there?
Got it. All right.
If it takes 2 months to hire 15 Hokies, and we're going to hire 15 Hokies by September, we just need to do the math to see if the number is accurate, because they didn't exclude the 2 full-time FTEs.
Okay.
And we'll have to reduce the money for the FTEs as well. So I'll do that out loud with you guys as I go. 118,000 divided by 2 is 59,000 for each FTE. But then if you, what is that? Divided by 12 for the months, then we know that 4,900, that's per month, and $16, just rounding off. And if you multiply that by 2, that's for the 2 FTEs, you can deduct the 2 months of pay for FTEs, $9,833.33. And then we'll do for the Hokies, okay? So originally we had said we need $565,000 for Hokies. And we need it for 15, so divided by 15, that brings us to about $37,666.66 for each Hokie. And then, because there are 15 of them though, right? But you have to divide that, what is that, by month? So divided by 12, then you have 3,138.88. And then you multiply that by month, yeah, by 15 and then by 2. So by 2, but then by 15. For 2 months is 6,277.77. And then you multiply that by 15. So by 15, that's 94,166.66. So we have to deduct for the total, which is the $682,584. We have to deduct this 94,000 for the 3 months, for the 2 months for Hokies, and this close to 10,000 for the 2 months for the FTEs. So it's 682,584, take away 94,166.66, and then take away the 9,000 as well, deduct 9,833.33. It's actually 578,584 and 1 cent. So really, the number that they suggested is 482,584. And if we deduct that from the actual total that we just got, deducting just 2 months to get them to hire, we're still missing a little bit of money. So if we want to be accurate, right? So 578,584 take away 482,584. So we're missing $96,000. Okay? So if it takes the administration 2 months to hire the 2 FTEs and the 15 Hokies, the total should actually be $578,584.01. But they're suggesting $482,584. And we did the math, we're missing $96,000. Do we want to override to add the $96,000? Any comments? Yes, okay. And, okay, Shane is taking notes, so we can move on. Okay, second bullet on the narrative summary of amendments. Decrease Boston Fire Department equipment. Lease purchase, increase environmental department by $125,000 for the addition of director of waterfront planning position. Does anyone have any comments or suggestion on this one? And then let's look at the sheet, the chart that, with the suggestions from the administration. If you find it, please give me the appropriation number so I can just get to it. Thank you. Okay. So that's a 0. Does anyone want to speak or comment on this one? No one? Oh, yeah, sorry. Council Braden?
They haven't given any rationale for why they've nixed this one, but I'm wondering with having a new chief of planning for the city and the state of transition that we're in with our BPDA infrastructure, I think it's an important, very important role to have, that we have some very mindful and intentional planning along the waterfront, but I'm wondering if there's some duplication or overlap in terms of, it would be nice to have a conversation about why this was nixed, but I imagine that there's some concerns about BPDA and new chief of planning and are we being duplicative in the environment department as well as the BPDA, or are we going to marry those two functions a bit more than we have in the past?
Okay. Yes, Councilor Flynn?
I know that, just from thinking back from previous budget meetings, I know that was a request from Councilor Coletta. So I would go on the record in support of this request by Councilor Coletta. It was important for her district. It was important that, you know, I think the mayor's office as well shifted the focus of attention more towards the East Boston waterfront in the ongoing development there. I think that was one of the reasons that Councilor Coletta recommended this, but I certainly would go on record in support of my colleague, Councilor Coletta, and in that position. I think it's important to her district, so I would support that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Flynn.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Councilor Mejia?
From what I understood from the conversation, I think this was, yes, it's important to Councilor Claudetta's specific district, but I do believe what I remember it was for citywide, because there's waterfronts across the entire city, and I believe that the position was that it would also serve South Boston, the Seaport, and I do believe, and I will also go on the record as a citywide councilor, that when we think about our waterfront and planning for it, that it needs to be a position that is specifically focused on that, and I believe it was citywide, just so that I'm clear on that.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Murphy?
Also follow up, if Councilor Flynn doesn't want to advocate to keep it in there, that it was citywide, that we want to make sure that this position, but I also do want to address what Councilor Braden said. It may already be included, and it may be something that this new planner is going to address. So I wouldn't want to spend money on something that's already in somebody's job description, but do agree that all of our waterfront. Don't forget Dorchester. Even though the expressway cut us off from being a waterfront neighborhood, we definitely still have waterfront in Dorchester. So I know you meant us too, because we're both from there. But if we are going to say that this is needed because the current new position is not covering this job, but that it
Okay.
was citywide, not just for East Boston or the North End.
Thank you.
Speak in support of my colleague. Like, I think she's very much East Boston and the North End and Charlestown are right in the epicenter of impacts of climate change. And so I really feel it definitely has merit, but as Councillor Murphy said, maybe it's been duplicative. Maybe there is a position and maybe we need to elevate that position to more importance. But either way, we definitely want this issue addressed in the budget and in planning and in our operating budget, that we definitely need to provide the resources to have this happen.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I agree with Councilor Mejia and Councilor Murphy. I know it's a citywide position. Well, I know now it is, but I'm glad that both Councilor Murphy and Councilor Mejia brought that up to me. But it's definitely something I support, so I'm glad they pointed that out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
Just in terms of process for other situations that may come up, to both Councilor Breeden and Councilor Murphy's point in regards to positions that already exist, if there's a way for us to, as we continue to move through this, if there's other situations like that we may want to flag it, or at least for us to know if there's a job description that is going to look at that. I believe that even if there's such a need for it, that maybe a blurb about, and you will also be responsible for the waterfront as part of your job description may not be enough for what this moment requires. So in other words, regardless if there is, that there might be a potential to amplify something dedicated to just this in particular. So just want to put that on the record.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Bullet 3. Decrease BFD contractual services line 5, it doesn't matter. Repairs and service to equipment. Increase Mayor's Office of Housing special appropriation by $400,000 to BHA for the city housing voucher program with set size of project base at IDP units to buy deeper affordability, returning citizens and BHA homeownership pilot launch. And then part 1 of part 3 of 3, total amount across 3 amendments to increase the voucher program to $2.5 million. Thank you. Love this teamwork. Okay. 188, and the administration is suggesting to reduce that amount of the total of 2.5 million by $650,000, and to accept $1,850,000. Any suggestions or comments or concerns?
Do I have the floor? Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the original filing of the council on this for the full 2.5 million. We know that this is not personnel. This is about housing needs and meeting the housing needs of our residents, for extremely low income folks, for folks in shelters, folks experiencing homelessness. And we also received a lot of advocacy here, so I'm in full support. I know multiple councilors filed an original amendment here for the full 2.5 million, and I'm in support of that 2.5 million.
So the interesting thing is that the administration took money out of other places. So here we have a situation where the decrease of 400,000 is coming from BFT contractual services, repairs and service equipment And over here, though, the amount to get to that is for $650,000 that's missing from the original suggestion. And so I'm wondering, then, do we ask to override, to return to what we said, means that we override a lot more, the rest of it, to get to that amount?
We revert to our original.
To our original, which
proposals.
is in 3 parts.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? So it's confusing because you have 2 dockets. And so if the administration had went to, for example, our line 3 and said, for this change, for this amendment, this is our response. In that way, we would override it as a response just to the $400,000. This is line 3 asking to take out $400,000. They went and shifted things around and took this 1.8 million about and took it from one place. But ours is in 3 parts. What makes it difficult is that if we override their suggestion, so that's the thing that I was going back and forth with Council Bach about, that we couldn't even do this in whole because it's missing a whole bunch of other stuff from our original filing. Okay, any other comments? Okay. We move ahead. The next one is decrease BFD, miscellaneous equipment increase, MOH, I think this is part 2. Appropriation of $400,000 to BHA, same, for the city housing voucher program. And the rest reads the same as what I just read above. This is part 2 of 3, totaling amount of 3 amendments to increase the voucher program by 2.5 million. So, same, right? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
Anyone else? The next one is decrease BFD equipment lease purchase by $178,618 to increase public works personnel services to accelerate waste reduction. I think we've already addressed this because it's part of the 311, right? Okay. But same with the original. I mean, I guess in this one we can override because the total difference goes back to the amount that we had originally suggested for Hokies. But because they were together with departments, we'd have to override it separately again if we want to address it. But they're kind of like together, which makes it interesting. So $96,000, where's my math? The $96,000 that was missing to get to the $578,000 is not the same, the total amount in just the BFD equipment that we had suggested to take out. And that means that we would only need like 12,000, 13,000 to get to it. So I don't know if overriding this would be combining it the same way they combined it by department, and then taking out and overriding the second piece, the second part of it, to get 12 more or 13 more thousand to get to the amount that we need. Any suggestions? Yes, Council Murphy?
So we are going through each amendment individually, deciding this group here if we want to override them. When you write up your committee report on Wednesday, will it go in for each individual one we'll vote on as a council on Wednesday, or will you submit it like the budget on the 8th as one whole package?
The first part.
It will go through. So if we go through all, I think there were however many I counted the other day, 20-something, there will be, each one will have its own separate docket.
That's
So
right.
we will then vote on the floor, and it will be clear who voted yes or no to each. And will we have attached the exact department and amount because originally...
Yes,
Yep, so it will say, we're adding this, and this is where it's going to come from.
that's right.
So, okay, perfect, thank you.
No problem. And right now, I'm just taking feedback and going through it, because it takes way too long to like disagree on the floor. And yes, will doubt the vote on each docket, and we'll file a separate. But I think that you'll find that some of my suggestions, my group 2 items or 3, and some of my filing, like some dockets, will only be like 1 item, depending on what makes sense. Okay, so do we want to take out the additional 13,000 from the second part of this, which was originally for waste reduction? I wish Council Bach was here, because I think this was this was her recommendation. She's coming back? Yes?
I have to leave in a minute. I have another meeting in 5 minutes. Could I beg a favor and ask, I'll leave you with this, the issue about the contractual services for the clerk's department to recodify the city.
Let me,
We're jumping that, but
let me close this and then we'll
Yeah,
get to
okay.
that. We'll jump to you. So so do we want to get the additional $12,000 to get to the right amount, to get the 15 Hokies starting in September and the 2 FTEs, waste reduction FTEs, to start in September? We need about $13,000 more. Should we get the difference in the second line 5, the one we just suggested, the second reduction from BFD? Yes, I would assume yes, because we addressed it already, and we said that, yeah, we want to get 15 Hokies, and we definitely want 2 waste reduction. No? Objection? Okay, we'll keep going. What about, okay, where is it on the page, and what line is it?
city clerk contractual services, we had asked for 200,000. I think on reflection, I think 100,000 would be good, but an absolute minimum of 75,000 we would accept, because we want to have this job done properly and done by a professional organisation that does this on a weekly basis, rather than. So I would amend that ask to 100,000 rather than 200,000.
Can you point me where it is?
It's
on,
161.
let's see, it's number 161 on the second page.
on the summary of amendments?
Yeah, summary of amendments.
Second page. We're working from the summary of amendments. Can you?
Oh, beg your pardon.
Thank you.
The 161 on.
Yeah, thank you. I found that one.
But I'm going, this is hard to find.
Because you wanted to skip to it. Was it 200,000? Let's just look for that number.
It was 200,000 in the original ask, and I think that was a generous ask. I think maybe 100,000 would be adequate, but an absolute minimum of 75.
Here it is. It's the second, third, fourth page. Bullet number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Found it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, fourth page, bullet number 6. Decrease administration and finance contractual services, increase city clerk contractual services, $200,000 to procure codification services for the review and codification of the City of Boston Code ordinances and the special acts relating to the City of Boston, including city charter.
You know, this issue hasn't been attended to for 50 years in terms of recodifying, and it's past time to put it right. So I don't want it to just fall off and be kick the can down the road for another year. We need to get started on this and correct this situation.
Okay. Sorry, I just need to find it on my spreadsheet. Did we get to it yet? We're not there yet? Okay, I'll just take notes on paper, or we'll take notes on paper. Okay. So, Councilor President Flynn, it's the fourth page on the summary of amendments and line item number, appropriation number 161.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I have that, and I just wanted to provide some information. I did have a very positive conversation with Councilor Braden about the importance of this type of work that is needed, and as Councilor Braden has mentioned, it hasn't taken place in the city for many, many years. And I'm concerned if we don't do it now and we kick the can down the road a little bit, you know, that 200,000 that we're asking is going to be more than, it's going to be more because time will have passed. But I think it's important. I think it's an important ask, it's an important request, and we're trying to get our documents really in order. So I just wanted to weigh in support of Council Braden's request.
Council Braden, you're saying that 75,000 is acceptable. The administration is recommending 80,000.
They're recommending
80,000?
Is it appropriation number 161?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought the total amount accepted was 0. Like I'm looking at the worksheet, the amendments. Is that?
So I guess it's not 161 because this is like just accepting what we recommended for clerk.
Yeah.
So let's look for that.
Accepting that was the personnel. That was an extra. That's there's 2 items with regard to the clerk.
One's
then.
200, one's 80.
So the other one is, do you see it on
On
the
the
administration's? Oh, here it is, 200 up here. Oh, 161 as well, I see.
yeah,
Sorry.
there's 2. Sorry, I didn't appreciate that they were both numbered the same.
You're saying that we override that but then ask for 100,000?
That would at least allow us to begin this process, and I'm anticipating that we could at least get started on this process.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask? So to clarify, Councilor Braden, it seems that our ask was passed for the 80,000 for the personnel and 200,000 for contractual, and you're asking that we increase the 80 to 100 to make sure that, no.
Personnel full-time equivalent has been approved of, like they accept that. The piece that's been discussed is the contractual services, and we had asked for 200,000, and it was thrown out entirely. And I'm saying, well, a compromise position would be to at least get 100,000 to do the contractual services, to contract this out to a municipal, to a company that it will be put out to bid for a select number of companies that would bid on doing this this work.
I thought both passed. I thought the 200,000 also passed, but I'll go back and check. I thought both passed.
Not according to this,
This one here?
matrix.
Worksheet.
Okay. The one I have, okay.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your
worries.
accommodation.
No worries. Okay, so let's go back to second page. And we are bullet number 6. Decrease BPD equipment, lease purchase, increase BTD contractual services by $75,000 to provide a subsidy for expanded Mission Hill Link service. I think this was Council Box, and she's not here. I'm in support of this Mission Hill Link services. Does anyone else have any comments about this? Yes, Councilor President Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also in support of that request as well. I think it's important, so I support it.
Thank you. Where are we? The 75. And it is appropriation 251 to override. All right, next. Decrease BPD contractual services communications, increase Parks and Recreation Department personnel services by $688,000, I'm sorry, $373 for one additional project manager, 5 additional tree maintenance roles for 4-person or similar, and 3 maintenance roles, park maintenance 4-person or similar, to specialize in urban wilds with aim to creating a pathway from Power Course Boston to Parks and Recreation Department. Do we have it on the administration? If you find it before me, please let me know. 300? Thank you. No. Well, maybe another page, hold on. Oh, here. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Cora. Okay, the administration is saying, decrease by 187,000, dollars, to accept $544,187. Probably the same logic here in terms of when to hire people, decreasing the 2 months or so that it would take them to hire. Sorry, the first page on the administration is 300. I guess this is like appropriation by department, so you'll see that numbers are similar if it's the same department. But so it's a first page, and then over here, it's bullet number, it's the last one on the second page of the summary. So I think this is the same logic, and I think we can accept this. Anyone have any suggestions or concerns about this? Okay, no? All right. Oh, wow, first, that's like the first or second green, huh? Okay, I think that's a pass. BPD, next one. We're moving on to the third page of the summary of amendments. Decrease BPD contractual services out of communications, increase environment department contractual services by $37,627 to increase the annual allocation to the Boston Groundwater Trust to $200,000. If you find it before me, let me know where. 303, thank you. That was a rejection? Is that 303 on the second page, right? Yes. Thank you. No, that was the other one, no.
On the matrix, it's on the
Third, thank you. 303 environment, here it is. So it's only, oh, this is an accept. It's all good. We're good. Okay? Moving on. 303, last page. So that's a pass. So what they're talking about, she didn't get anything. All right, next one. Decrease PPD personnel services. Decrease personnel services overtime by $4,120,000. Increase YEE personnel services $1,373,333, and YE contractual services to $2,746,667 to fully fund 6,000 youth summer jobs and account for a pay adjustment. Can we find it on the matrix? Thank you. All right, this is what I like when it's actually addressing the way we sent it. So the administration is suggesting that we decrease that amount, obviously taking it out of somewhere else, and not overtime, or police overtime, and decreasing that amount by $2,290,000, but suggesting to accept an amount of $2,196,667. Any recommendations or comments about that? Does anyone object to that? To accepting the mayor's suggestion?
Well, I had a question. Is similar to the Hokies and similar to the Parks Department, is this similar to that in that summer youth, if we're hiring summer youth and starting the process in July, is that why it's decreased? I know I know I agree with the administration on the need for public safety and police resources in overtime. I'm not questioning that, but is the decrease because of that the summer would be half over at that time? Is that why it's being decreased? I just wanted to see if anyone knew the answer to that.
So what they said was both.
Okay.
One, that they wouldn't start until September, so it wouldn't essentially need money to hire in summer because it would take too long. But that we asked for it to go in contractual and hoping that it was quicker to hire, because that's what we heard from the hearings with YE. But also that they felt that the department wasn't prepared to build capacity that fast. It was already getting an increase, and they felt that over time it could get more increase. But that at the moment, because they were already increased, that they needed time to build capacity.
No, thank you for that response, Madam Chair.
No problem. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Bach?
I'm sure. I just wanted to check, I'm sorry, I've been in and out dealing with something and I've got to go, so I just wanted to check if you needed, I heard that you had asked for me, so I'm just checking whether there was anything that you wanted me to, before I disappear again, so.
Feel free to go through the summary if there's anything you want to address before you go. I think it was on the Mission Hill link. We
yeah.
supported that, and then we moved on.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
And then the groundwater thing, like, that was done, like, the waste, we figured the math out. We were gonna override only one side to kind of get closer to the amount that we needed, because it was like still missing when you added the 2 FTEs for waste reduction and the 15 Hokies to start in September. It would just reduce 2 months of pay for both sides, and therefore missing an amount of $96,000. And then we were like 13,000 short. So, but still, if we only override one portion of it, we would be fine. So like accepting it and overriding only one portion of it to get the remaining, or not at all and just leaving it as is.
Okay, all right, great. No, thanks for that, and sorry to be in and out today.
No worries. Okay, so without, if no one else has any other suggestions on that, we'll move on. All right, second item, decrease BPD personnel services overtime again, to $4,120,000 increase. YE personnel services $1 million to $1,373,333, and YE contractual services $46,667 to fully fund 6,000. Oh, did I read that already? Is that the same one? Yeah, sorry about that. So the second one, sorry, it's actually just taking out overtime about 2.7 million, and then increasing it to YEE. Contractual 930,000, and personnel 930,000, and contractual 1.8, about 1.8, to fully fund 1,500 youth year-round jobs. And so for the year-round, this one though, it doesn't present the same issue, because that means that if they're saying that they need 2 months to hire, they have 2 months to hire. So there's actually no need to decrease this portion based on that reason. So does anyone have any suggestions about this one? We could, if we overrided, it would go back to the 2.3 that we're asking for. No? Are we good? No comments? Well, here, interesting, they have that we recommended 2.3, but it's actually 2.7. So that's a mistake on their part, on this, and I'd have to like see in the report if that's the amount that they actually put, but it looks like there's a typo or they didn't put the right amount. I don't see it in here explained at all, but, okay. Anyway, there's a mistake. The amount is inaccurate. That's not what we recommended. We actually recommended, $2,790,000, and they put down that we had recommended $2,303,333. Decreasing, they recommended that they decrease $100,000 to just accept, and I think it's not taking it out of BPD overtime, but a total amount of about 1,300,000. All right, if there's no comments, we'll just move on. Yes?
So does that mean that the 2.3 that we advocated for is what we're going to keep? Right? 2.7,
If we override,
if we override, right? Is that the goal?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, not the goal, I mean, no one's saying anything.
Okay.
I haven't decided yet, no one said anything about it, so.
No, I just wanted to know if that's what we were referring to right now.
Yeah, that's what we're referring to. It's just written differently on their sheet.
Yeah.
What they did is they broke down contractual to personnel, and instead of summer jobs and year-round jobs. So that makes it a little bit difficult, because if we pass the first one, which is contractual services, for just about 2 million, and then we pass the other one is only about 1.3 million, we couldn't break it up. We either have to override it to the way that it was, or we couldn't break it up. So that's definitely something for me to do some work on. All right, thank you. Okay. The next one is decrease BPD personnel. Nope, did that already. BPD personnel again, sorry. Overtime, city clerk personnel services, 80,000. Did we do that one? Is that?
I don't feel, Madam Chair, I don't feel like we've done that one. But I feel like that was accepted by the administration, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. The line 161 on the second page, right? It was interesting. It was accepted, but I mean, the money's not coming out of. What was it accepted as is? Like, it's not clear. Just saying it's going to clerk. It's not saying where it's coming from. Okay, well, the amount's there. We accept? Yep. Alrighty, that's easy. I like that. Okay, next one, decrease PPD personnel to increase blackmail advancement personnel services to $600,000. Can you guys tell me where it is on the, here it is, page 2, 519? Excuse me. Instead, the administration is recommending 200,000, decreasing it by 400,000. What do you guys want to do? Yes, Councilor Mejia?
Councilor Rorell and I both were advocating for a larger amount,
Yeah.
and I don't find the recommendation suitable to the needs that this moment requires, so I'd like to push for what we originally asked for.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
Where we can just say, look at Neil all up in my face. Neil, you want to hear what I gotta say?
Poor Neil.
Is this the part where we say, okay, well, we asked for $1 million, or I'll ask for 8. I think you proposed 6, and she came back with 2. Is this where we talk about, well, can you at least get us to 5? Or do we just have to go with the full-on what we asked for?
I mean, I think everything is a conversation, right? The administration is showing that they want to talk beyond this point. So let's say you say, look, 5 is acceptable, right? Then I'm going to say to them, 5 is the least that we'll allow.
Okay.
That we're gonna override to 5, and we're trying to compromise or collaborate.
Okay.
Do you want me to just say override to 5?
Yeah, I think in the interest of being collaborative, I think that this would be a good faith compromise on our behalf. I hate to speak for Councilor Rorell, but I know he was asking for 8, and I asked for $1 million, and I think if we can land somewhere in 5, that would be a little bit more acceptable.
Okay. I think that, so I've taken notes, and I will certainly have that conversation, and you'll see it in the report. Thank you. All right. The next one, decrease BPD contractual services, increase Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement, MOIA contractual services by $50,000 for English speakers, was it English language, learners, I guess, ESOL courses. Does, you guys, I think that was accepted, right? Which one is that? Page, first page? 113, okay, so. Oh, it's just a whole bunch of all clumped up in there. The ESOL accepted, they were all accepted in whole. So we'll just, can we find those items?
Yeah, that's perfect, actually.
Thanks. All right, so pass. And let me know when you find it. I'm looking as well. The amounts of 100 and 100.
So it's another bullet point, decrease BPD contractual services. Line 52, 100 communications, increase MOIA contractual services, 100K to support Immigrants Lead Boston. Do you see that?
No, I wouldn't, I want to find it on,
Oh, they're all together 113 on the sheet. And in terms of bullet point, it's almost,
I
on
want to
this-
check it off on the summary.
Yeah, so that's what I'm reading. On this bullet, it's right here.
So which number?
These are
Oh,
not numbered.
contractual over here, 100. I found one of them. Immigrants Lead Boston, that one?
Yep, there's that one.
Yes. Do we know where the other one is?
Then, yep, it's the second to last bullet on the last page of the bullets. Decrease that one. And so all the 3 from Moya were accepted.
Second to last, okay, check. Got it, and so, sorry, I just have to make sure. Shane, do you know where the other one is? Oh, here it is, I found it. Thank you. Okay, back to our list. Check. Decrease BPD personnel services, increase Office of Human Services, contractual services 800 to increase capacity in Office of Returning Citizens. Can we find it on the matrix?
Yes, on the matrix, it's on the first page. It's 388.
388.
88.
Okay, so the suggestion is only 300,000, decreasing it 500 by 500,000. What do we want to do?
So we've heard from multiple, I'd like to see this office fully funded. We had hearings on this issue. We brought in folks from DC's Office of Returning Citizens Affairs to talk about what a robust office would look like. We know that here in the city of Boston, City Hall, and the Office of Urban Mechanics, we have folks who are dedicated to looking at how we build up an office that has been disinvested in since its inception. And so we've heard from the advocates about what we think that $800,000 is the right number and just to correct the record as well, for programming and community support. So we're not talking about money that's being allocated for staff capacity, right? So we don't have that issue of, are we able to hire the personnel in time? This is about, working in deep partnership with the community-based organizations that have been doing the work, responding to the needs that have been going unmet of returning citizens or formerly incarcerated folks when they come to the office with basic needs and aren't able to get the support that they need because of the lack of bandwidth in what and how the office can support formerly incarcerated folks. So I believe that this is a request that's coming from out of the work here in City Council in deep partnership with community members, with organizations that are being led by formerly incarcerated folks, with strong coalitions here, including the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. So I'm in support of us as a City Council doing what we've already done in supporting the work of ORC and formerly incarcerated folks and fully funding this $800,000 request. And, similar to Councilor Mejia, I, in good faith, want to work in collaboration. So, I believe that there are, if for whatever reason we can't meet that, I didn't put forward that many amendments of a significant amount. But I'm open to discussion. I would like to see the $800,000 fully funded office. We know that that's a number that is doable, and that community has been asking for. And we were really intentional in our hearings and in follow-ups about what that number should look like.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to second that in terms of just having worked in that space in other capacities. I really do believe that if we're really serious about addressing the needs, then we need to fully invest it. And so I will second and fight alongside you for that, Councilor Louis-Jean.
Thank you, Council Mejia. Okay. Moving on, noted, and we'll address it. I look forward to updating you on that. Okay, so next one, decrease equipment, just $52,000, also from BPD equipment, increased property management department contractor services for graffiti busters. Do we have it on the matrix? I thought that was allowed, but.
Yeah, it's on 180. There was a page below the last page. 180 of the matrix, last page.
Thank you. So that's easy, okay. Yes? No, you can't leave me. No, because you were helping me speed this up, so no. You have to go? Where are you going?
Okay, let's go. Speed.
All right, thank you.
Speed.
Thank you for your help. Next, do you want to read them?
No.
Okay. Decrease BPD personnel. BPD must be watching us right now. Sorry, the list to go down is, quite interesting. Decrease BPD personnel services, overtime. This is taking money out of overtime, $600,000 to increase right staff wages. I think
Administration, good. We're good. We can move on to next bullet.
Yes, that's what I need. All right. What about the next one? LGBTQ, we're good.
I believe we're good there. We already did Immigrants Lead Boston.
We did.
Yep.
Office of Neighborhood Services.
No, we haven't done that yet.
Okay. Could we find it in the matrix?
Is it 41, is this for 311? It's 412. It was accepted.
It was accepted?
Yep.
Thank you. What about next one, the $1,700?
1,700,000, looks like.
Oh, we said override,
Oh, yep, yep,
right?
yep.
Yes? Councilor President Flynn,
Yeah, can you,
read it out.
no, I just want to get back on the page that you're on. We're on the third page,
We are,
bullet points.
we're on the third page. I'm on bullet. Now on 12.
Okay,
And we said that that's passed, so we're on 13. So
Oh.
on 13, it was passed, but not to take out of BPD. The administration found money somewhere else for the, what was it? Neighborhood services.
okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now we're on bullet 13. Decrease BPD equipment. We want to take out 17.
We've already done that.
We already done that
Yeah.
because we said override, okay? And then next one, small business, technical assistance. That was, I'm okay with that. That was mine. I'm okay with that because you know what? Let's try it first year and then see what happens and then come back.
What number is it on the matrix?
It is first page 182. But I didn't get my life insurance thing. Fine, nobody likes that idea.
You got half of what you asked for, basically.
Yeah, but she said she's fine.
I got half and I'm fine with it because, like, say we fund it now and then it's a great idea and then it gets doubled next time, hopefully. So that's a pass to 500,000. What about, next, BPDH to BCYF. Isn't that the SOAR? Oh, boy. All right, we got to figure this out. I'm going to do an override on that.
Madam Chair, can you just read it for me?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Decrease Boston Public Health Commission special appropriation, increase BCYF personnel services, $100,000 for 2 FTE for SOAR Charlestown. Didn't find it on the matrix. It'd probably be whatever it's a 0, because it was not allowed, from what I remember. 385? Second page, 385. And then it was coupled with another one that was kind of similar to that. And then we'll get to that. We'll get to the youth workers, but for the first one, for the SOAR, I think I want to have a conversation with administration about this one, okay? Only because we know Council Coletta was not able to advocate or get her stuff that she advocated for. All right, so that's a conversation for override or compromise. Okay, next, decrease BPHC, $100,000 for burial. I think that was accepted, right?
I think, yeah.
We're good on that, right? Mm-hmm. And
Yep,
Shane,
there's 300 on the matrix.
oh, what number 300 on first page?
Second page.
Second page, bureau, yep, see it. Okay, pass. And next one, increase a strong $50,000. Haven't found it yet. sorry.
387. It was accepted.
Is accepted,
Yep.
pass. Next one, increase Office of Economic Opportunity, Commission Citywide Life Insurance. Oh, yeah. They turned it down. Whatever. I'll mark that red. All right. do nothing about that, fine. And next one, decrease Boston Public Health contractual services. Nope, addressed that already. Decrease departmental innovation technology, do it. Personnel services, increase city council personnel. Didn't we get that? We got that,
It might
right?
not have come from the same, but I think that we ended up getting it.
We end up getting it, right? Okay,
I think that's 161,
on page 2?
I believe.
No, that's clerk. Let me see.
Oh,
It's somewhere in here. We know we got, did we get the full amount?
I
Are we
believe
good to
so.
go on that? Can we find it? First page, 112. There it is.
okay.
Are we good on all the amounts? 160,
Yep.
130.
0 changes made.
So those two, the next one is pass.
Yep,
0 changes made to the other recommendation as well?
yep. So we're on decreased BFD equipment, line 5400.
Thank you. BFD equipment to go where?
Oh, that's funding car 5.
Oh, snap. So
I'm
Council
in support here.
you're in support?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly support, I know this is a major request from Council Flaherty, but it's supported by all of our colleagues, CAR 5. So I would support that recommendation of the city council is in support of CAR 5. I think it's needed.
Okay, I will have a conversation. I think the issue is where it's coming from. I'll have a conversation if, the administration can make suggestions on this one, and I've noted that we all supported it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next one? Increase PFD. Wait, is that the same?
Yep, it's
It's
the same
second part?
part. Mhm.
All right. Increase city clerk contractual services 200,000.
I saw this one somewhere.
I believe that was the request from Councilor Braden, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was not accepted.
It was not accepted. Oh, yes, this is where she said, can we ask for 100? Thank you, Shane. Okay, it's there. It's noted, and I'll figure out where to get Z money. All right. Next, increase PCYF personnel services. We're taking it from YEE. This is the BHA youth workers, right? Was this Councilor Coletta stuff? It was Braden,
Yep.
and she didn't make any. And that was not accepted. Wait,
100.
can we find it on the matrix? $120,000 from YEE to go to BHA. I don't see it. 385, you said? There it is. It was not accepted. Well, we said override the SOAR part. Do we want to override this one? Yes, Councilor Mejia?
Extra slow today.
No worries.
Did we skip the first page? Because I don't remember talking about.
We
any
did.
of the-
We skipped it on purpose.
Oh, so we're not going to talk about it today?
We are.
Oh,
We're
okay.
on inter, we're going to intro next.
Oh, okay.
All right, so anyway, no one is here to speak on behalf of this. I'll get in touch with, I'll put a question mark on this. Council Braden. All right, next, the next one is addressed. The next one is increase BPHC special appropriation, $160,000 for Youth Development Network, FTE.
Yeah,
What line item is that? I mean, where is that in the matrix?
I don't know if they even made it there. This is the last one.
Yeah, well,
I don't see it.
me neither.
Yeah, it's 620,
620?
620?
second page of the.
Oh, yep. All right, so this one, this is the Youth Development Network that works with students who are chronically absent. And this is, we only asked for 160,000. They actually need more than that. And so I'm just curious as to if any insight as to why it was not approved.
Well, probably because it's like BPD, asking for more money out of BPD. I didn't, a logical explanation I don't have for you, but can we, you would like to override it, can I put that?
Yeah, I'd like to, so I'm clear with the override situation, I'd like to advocate that our request for 160,000 remains.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I support that.
And you support that. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know, the most important ones, like the ones, we're losing everybody. UT's leaving.
Well, in this one, based on their rules, I think we're gonna go through it very quickly because there's only like a couple that we can shift. Yes?
Are we doing intra-department now?
Yes.
Okay. That's
Page
it.
one, sorry.
Yeah, page one, okay.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes?
Was it, because these are the most complicated ones? Or do you have a strategy as to kind of why we left this one for last?
Because, I mean, it's going to be a quick list. Some of the rules that they, like their argument applies, but some of it doesn't. So I just wanted to like go through it. And if it's exactly what they said, then fine. But there are a couple of items here that I think can still be moved.
Okay.
So for the first one, within inspectional service, 150,000 to go to, for 2 additional environmental health inspectors. So that one is like, no.
Can you say that again? That one is what?
So, interdepartmental, the argument that they're making, I mean, we could push back and get their response on it. The argument was that if it's interdepartmental going from ISD to ISD, technically it's sort of like encroaching on executive power, telling the commissioner or the chief what to do or how to do their job or who, because then if you're not saying, here's the money to create that position or that line item, then you're essentially asking or telling them to fire or lay off somebody or move money around. And that technically is against the rules. So what they're saying is we can't do that. And then I asked legal in terms of what about if it's new money that we're sending to that department, then how could we move that around? But I think that the administration has, like in good faith, they should work with us and say, we understand what you were trying to do here, let us help you find the money. So the conversation now is going to be about notating exactly what we really want to push forward and then asking them to help us with that and then see what happens.
Yeah, if I could just add, Madam Chair, the pest control is an issue that I've focused on for the last 5 years, and it's critical that we add more resources to various departments to address pest control, because the amount of mice and rats in this city, it continues to increase, and it's a public health emergency in my opinion. So I really want to advocate for more support for pest control.
Right. Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I've highlighted that as a priority for you, and we'll definitely be having conversations with the administration to see what we can do.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we can move past the abatement, because I think that's kind of all related. Councilor Mejia and Councilor Flynn, if you guys go through this list and pull out exactly what you want to address, for time's sake,
Okay,
I'm
okay.
okay with just addressing your priorities, and then we close out. Okay, so go through the first page all the way to the second page, and let me know exactly, highlight exactly what you want me to address.
So the last bullet, within the Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, personnel services, 150, to build capacity and logistically appropriate technical assistance for immigrant businesses.
The 350,000?
No, there's two items, one for 150,000 for personnel,
Mm-hmm.
and then the second bullet is within the same office for contractual services for 350 to offer grants to minority-owned small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So they're two separate items.
Mm-hmm.
And, based on the work that we've been doing during COVID and post-COVID, and working in collaboration with BECMA and other organizations that are working towards supporting Black and brown businesses, we have come to learn that there is a gap for immigrant businesses who are not English speaking in terms of navigating city services, right? So they're usually the last to get things, but we know that immigrants are also a big part of, the economy, and they are struggling. And so for me, based on the budget pop-ups that we've done, and even here on the council, I believe that this item here is worth fighting for, to really support immigrant-owned businesses. And I know I asked for $500,000 and we came back with zero. So in good faith, I do believe that this is an opportunity for the city to really reflect the values of, having a high concentration of immigrants, working towards supporting them, and what better way to do that, and making sure that they're able to access city services, apply for grants, and be able to do so successfully. So,
While we're on your priorities, Councilor Mejia, I think that the 500,000 for experiential learning can be argued, because it's new funds that is going in. They didn't appropriate it. We are the ones who sent those funds there. They're recommending a new amount that still covers the 500,000, specifically for contractual experiential learning, so stipends to go toward that. And I think I'm gonna definitely recommend that we override that, because I think that the rule that they're explained does not apply here. So basically, they're saying you can't tell us what to do with money that was already planned to hire people. We have a plan with that, and that's, if you tell us how to do that, that's technically, and I still think it's open for argument, because the amendment says we can amend and line items. So I think that's what we did. But still, in terms of their argument, they're saying if it's already appropriated, then you're technically asking for an executive power, you're trying to encroach on executive power to tell them, to, like, who do they fire, who do they lay off in order to create that. But when we're sending new funds,
Yeah.
then, yeah, use 500, we're saying use 500 of that to, and I can send it back in that way, actually specifying this is the funds that we have appropriated.
That's specifically for the exponential learning, which is different than the minority businesses, right?
Right.
Because the immigrant business is the one that we're talking about right now, that came back with 0.
Right.
And so my question is what I've heard from the administration in regards to wanting to support immigrant-owned businesses, they've also identified a gap in being able to do so in terms of multiple languages. You know, Councillor Flynn had asked about if they had any Cantonese or Mandarin-speaking folks on the team. And so this is where I talk about building capacity. If we really want to ensure that our immigrant businesses are being supported, then we need to make sure that we're setting up the Office of Economic Inclusion up to be able to do that. And when I think about inclusion, I think about all, and immigrants are a part of that conversation. Mm-hmm. And so if the office is moving towards a lens of making sure that we're taking care of everyone, then I think that this advocacy towards personnel, right, to hire the capacity and the staff that they need, as well as putting some dollars aside for contract services is a reasonable request. Now, I think what is up for discussion and in the spirit of being collaborative and really trying to meet the administration halfway, if we're asking for $500,000 and they don't see that as something that is viable, then I'd like to ask what is and what's going to be our pathway to ensure that immigrant businesses across the city, and I know Councilor Breeden had also talked about the immigrants that live in Alston and Brighton. Immigrants live all across the city of Boston. And right now, I haven't heard a strategy that is specifically designed to support immigrant businesses. And if it doesn't exist, we have a little bit here and a little bit there, but we need to invest in building the infrastructure to set these businesses up for success.
Thank you. Okay. I have it.
Madam Chair?
I got you. Yes, Councilor Flynn?
Could I just echo what Councilor Mejia talked about in terms of immigrant-owned businesses? My district in Chinatown, the business community, most of the businesses are owned by immigrants that speak a different language. They speak English, but they also speak another language. I also have a large community in the south end that speak Spanish, that many of the businesses there are also immigrant-owned as well. So I certainly support the efforts in the outreach and the support of immigrant-owned businesses, and agree with Council Mejia that there should be some funding in the budget for that. Maybe we don't get everything that we ask for, but we certainly should have something in there that's able to help a number of businesses owned by immigrants.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Councilor Flynn, did you have priorities that you wanted to pull from the interdepartmental ones?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. On the first page, the second one from the bottom, the Public Works and Boston Transportation Department, one issue that I've really focused on over the last 5 years is pedestrian safety measures. I've had several people in my district that were killed in pedestrian safety accidents or crashes. It's an issue that I continue to focus on. So it's important for me that, we continue to invest in infrastructure improvements that protect our residents. Many of them are seniors. Many of them are persons with disabilities. Many of them are parents taking their little kids to school or taking their little kids to, the library or after-school programs. And I see these people cutting through Boston at excessive speeds, going 50 miles an hour up L Street or down Broadway, while an elderly person is trying to cross the street. That's outrageous. So not only do we have to change the minds of drivers about being courteous and respectful, but we also have to change we have to make infrastructure improvements so that residents are safe in our neighborhoods. I also think we should lower the speed limit. 25 miles an hour is excessive in the city of Boston, especially in dense neighborhoods of the city. But I know that's for another discussion. But I certainly support the money in the budget for pedestrian safety measures. It's a matter of life and death.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman here?
I have two more on the list. One is a pilot program for housing stipends for young people, 19 to 24-year-olds. And that did not make it to the list. So I'm just curious as to what you learned, because what I have decided to do is do all my work through the chair. So I haven't spoken to the administration in due respect of you as the Ways and Means chair. So I'm just curious, aside from we can't move money from one place to another, just curious about what you've learned and what that advocacy looks like.
For both, the special appropriation, $500,000 for the pilot housing stipends for young people aged 19 to 24, and the $1 million for housing stipends for municipal employees struggling to pay. With this one, I don't know if you recall, we were talking about taking it out of BPD at first, and you suggested that. And I think one of the counselors, I won't mention names because she's not here, but mentioned that we wanted to limit what we were taking out of BPD over time so that we can prioritize the youth jobs. When you agreed to that, we thought that we could prioritize this as a footnote, sort of saying this is, we can actually ask the departments to do this as a priority. And they came back and said, at first they said, yes, that's okay, because we're just moving money around in inter-department, and it didn't hurt. We weren't decreasing it or taking it out of OT, but then I think they were wrong, and then later found out and then informed me that that was not possible. And so this is not an example that I can shift because we're not actually sending new monies to be appropriated. I think I can have a conversation with the administration, and I also welcome you to now have a conversation to see how much of this you can have. You can talk about programming. I think there's also opportunity for ARPA funds for you to move to a program that you prioritize, such as this. But I think that's further conversation that we can have and see what the administration is willing. And then please update me so that I know how I'm preparing the report. And we could do that together as well.
Thank you. I'll go on Twitter and let y'all know how I feel. No, I'm just joking.
That's your go-to.
That's my go-to. All transparency here.
I appreciate the respect that you've extended to me as chair, and I will do my best to advocate for you, but also we can have that conversation together with administration. I'm ready to support you in having that conversation. Thank you. Is there anything else, Council Flynn?
Madam Chair, so we're just talking about the intra-department, and that's the information basically from the first page, is that correct?
That's correct. And then there's a little bit on page 2 as well. We've covered most of page 2, though.
Yeah, no, I highlighted the issues I had. Mine were the nuts and bolts of city government, quality of life issues, and for some reason, they're knocked off the budget.
I think that, you know, these are things that are in capital, and if, let's have a conversation about how we can prioritize what you're highlighting here, Councilor Flynn.
Yeah, I mean,
We wanted to create a footnote about something that's already being spent or planned for in capital, but I think that it's open for conversation. The administration is expressing that they're open to work with us collaboratively on this, so.
Madam Chair, can you explain the $50,000 for mental health response crisis training to be provided by the City Council and 311 staff? I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, yes, can you tell me the bullet
It's about 5 or 6 down
page?
on the first page.
Oh, 5, 1, 2.
8 down, I guess it is.
Oh, here it is. So actually, this one, it's worded, I think it comes off as if it's like intra-departmental, but it's not. It was supposed to be contract funds from to council, to the city council budget, but it does read as though it's just bringing the person from Boston Public Health. And so it was essentially that a lot of our director of constituent service, our staff, the admin staff deal with a host of information that comes their way. A lot of it requires trauma-informed types of responses. And if we contracted someone to actually provide that level of, like, you know, weekly check-in, or if needed, that it would support our staff with self-care or addressing crisis as they get it on the phone or in person.
So that makes sense to me. Is that something that's being knocked off the budget?
It's being knocked off. Would you like for me to highlight that as well?
Yes, I would. I think it's, I mean, having heard your explanation, and I know the calls I receive as a city councilor, I know the calls my staff receives, I know the calls 311 receive as well. I speak to them frequently. I met with 311 today on their operation. I have great respect for the staff that works at 311, but a small amount of money, like $50,000 for mental health crisis training, assistance for city council staff and 311 seems appropriate to me.
Yeah, and I think you make an excellent point, Council Flynn, and then it ties back to what you said earlier and what Council Mejia was saying about the frustration of if this was a miscommunication where we understood that this was okay, that we could do interdepartmental footnotes or changes, and that at one point it was communicated that it was okay, then at whatever point they decided it wasn't okay, that it should have been a conversation, and to prioritize maybe a couple of things in here. In all fairness, I think it's saying it's looking at what people are interested in, and the couple of things that were moved were the chairs, mine, and probably because in the things that I moved wasn't like project-based or things that I was working on. It was mostly for admin staff, and maybe they saw that as like, that's not really for her. Let's try to get everyone something that they're passionate about. And so I think in consideration for everyone, they try to do that to the best of their ability, and I think they made a mistake sometimes. For example, if they said, well, let's look out for Councilor Mejia, they might have not seen that, they might have thought something else was Mejia's, whereas it would belong to someone else who's advocating for it. So I don't think there was like ill will. It was more about, we are willing to move around this much money, and how can we divest that in everyone fairly? And then, again, faulted at where they mistaked one item to belong to one person, but it actually belongs to someone else. So I think that's my attempt to be fully transparent, and we're saying 7-point-something million is not enough. Thank you for trying to move things for all of us, and now we're in this process where we're gonna go back and talk to them before I file to override or pass.
Bless your beautiful heart, always assuming best intentions on people's behalf. I love it. I just wanted to quickly just note that I also agree with Councilor Flynn in regards to, and everybody knows I'm always talking about mental health and wellness is key. And I think that this is also one of those situations where if we can't get it through the people's budget, because that's what this is, not the mayor's budget, or the council's, just to be clear, that this is something in terms of ARPA funding, because a lot of the cases that we've heard from 311 and even our staff, you know, there's trauma, right? And there's still the residue of that. So if we can't get it through this time around through the operating budget, maybe I would recommend that this is something that we can advocate through opera funding so that we could build the infrastructure for it so that it could be long-term and sustainable as something for us to, if they come back and say no, that we have a backup plan for it, because it is worth the fight. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll take any final comments or statements. I just want to, again, extend myself, my time to work with you guys in going through this and making sure that I am properly advocating for your priorities. I will probably, over the weekend, in the next couple of days, work with administration, and second part, working with myself to put this together and file. I think we've gotten to a point, we will check in a hearing on Monday. It's a check-in. Hopefully it's nice and quick. And then I will file, and so it will essentially be matters recently heard. And then on Wednesday, I look forward to the meeting.
On the budget, this is a new process. Does anyone know?
Your prerogative, you could certainly, of course, always say present, but then you don't count, right?
I never count.
Well, you always count. Councilor President Flynn?
I just want to say thank you to you, Madam Chair, for the important leadership you're providing. I also want to say thank you to our central staff that's here for their important work as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia, Councilor President Flynn. And we'll keep working. Thank you for your time. Meeting adjourned.